November 15th, 2022, we'll call the city council regular meeting to order. Can you all stand for the pledge of allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You can go ahead. Well,
Please join me. Father, we just come before you now and we just give thanks and praise to you for your goodness. Lord, I just am thankful for just how you continue to provide for each and every one of us every single day with so many things that we don't even have to ask you for. And so, Lord, we know that you've asked as to where we need wisdom, that we are to come to you and ask you, and that you are generous and you love to give. And so, Father, we ask for your wisdom. Be with these who are here in this meeting as they gather. That you would just lead them and guide them, that we would recognize that you have provided, that your plan is what is best. And so, Lord, we thank you. It's in your son, Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, Tom.
All right. So item number 3, citizen comments and reports. And we have several people signed up to speak. So we will start in no particular order with Mr. Billy Gaskins.
Brand.
Just as a reminder for all of our citizen comments, state your name and your address, and you're given 3 minutes, please.
Okay, my name is Billy Gaskins, 1103 Whispering Sands. And I'm here to speak to thank you guys for seeing me. I'm here to speak to y'all about an ordinance we have about, well, it ends up being about food trucks in a way. It's about remote sales on your property. And the wording gets, like I have a small restaurant and I was looking to put a small trailer and have remote sales. As the ordinance reads, you have to serve the same like items from your main restaurant as well as the remote restaurant, which seems like if you own all of that and you complied with the city and the county and health department and everybody, that you should be able to kind of decide what you want to do on your own property. Now, I'm not talking about going up and down the beaches with food trucks and all that. I'm talking about my business, for one, is like all outside. I don't have inside seating. So we were hoping to, have some food here and some food there. Nothing was concession type food. But anyway, the way the ordinance reads, an approved food service establishment can engage in the outdoor sales of same menu food service items. That one sentence kind of ties your hands to duplicating everything you're doing there in one place to do it in the other place too. So I've seen this has been modified not too many years ago, I think in 2015, and I didn't know if y'all could discuss it and see, if there's any stretch on that one sentence. It's kind of cumbersome. So that was me.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, Billy. All right, next speaker, Scott Johnson.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Scott Johnson, 13455 Dallas, Texas, Noel Road, Suite 400. I'm here as the owner, partner with the city for Palladium Port Aransas Apartments, and give you a brief update on where we are on our environmental conditions at the property. So need to start off first by saying we appreciate the residents and what they've had to put up with for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 months. And but we are, I think, nearing the end of the tunnel. I'm hoping that's light from the other end and not another train. But we've done a lot of things out there, and we've made some dramatic improvements, I do believe, with the results being that our initial complaints that we experienced early on have really been eliminated by complaints to management. as far as the conditions of the units. We think we have found the solution and the culprit of the initial problem. It was, I'm not not going to speak as the expert, but I can speak after dealing with all of our engineers and consultants and engineers and consultants 2 or 3 times that we've had a perfect storm. And it is not pushing blame on anybody in particular or at all, actually, but it's the perfect storm. We had a development that was coming out of construction and certainly didn't help matters, but we could not get our power or transformers to the property for months and months, and it sat there in a state that was closed up, but yet no power. And once you get people moved in very quickly and then you turn everything on, things that you weren't aware of start to materialize. So we went through that. We do have I think it's my theory, that we have an energy code that we have to deal with, IEC CC 2015. And it's an interesting code. It's an energy code to make the buildings more efficient. And it's got a little loophole, in my opinion, that if you're a property that's 3 stories or less, you really don't need outside air induced to the unit. If you're 4 stories or more, you don't need that requirement. So here we are. The code is a great code. It's got its place. Not sure when they wrote it if coastal conditions, 85% humidity being pumped into a unit was probably not the best idea. 40 to 60 probably works ideal. So we've done a lot of things in correcting it, testing, sanitizing, professional sanitizing. Now we're doing renovations on some units, a lot of concessions, but the initial complaints that we were seeing have crawled down to an absolute minimum, if at all, in the last 60 days. So I just wanted to share that with you to show that we are making progress, and we're not done yet. So, but
Appreciate the update.
Thank you very much, Scott.
thank you all. Thanks.
All right. All right, Marty Phelan.
Marty Fallon, 168, 5 Dove. 168 5 Dove Circle in Port Aransas. Just a couple of things that are on the agenda that kind of piqued my curiosity. I thought I'd make comment on. Item P talks about the Hotel Motel Occupancy Tax Advisory Committee. And it looks like there's 5 people proposed that Dave picks 2 and 3 members from the Chamber of Commerce picks, 2 of which are city lodging type people. I'd ask you to consider opening up a couple of the seats, or at least one of the seats, to just regular citizens of the town that might have some interest in that too, and stuff like that, as opposed to just or whoever Dave selects. Maybe Dave's consideration could be, general people of the town. The other one was there's a resolution, there's a handbook proposed, and there was a section in it that talked about a couple of things. Actually, it says, one says no board or commission member shall apply for employment with the city while serving in a capacity on a board or commission. I don't really understand why you couldn't apply. Once you get accepted, of course, if you were lucky enough to get the job, that would probably I'm sure that would disqualify you, but applying, I mean, who knows, a lot of people apply for other things. And then there was another thing in that talked about essentially behavior. It talks about personnel being imprudent or slanderous remarks and stuff like that. My question is really, who would decide that? What does that really mean and stuff like that? When I was working at the NRC, we had a lot of public meetings, and there are rules and local ordinances, for disorderly conduct and stuff like that. So there's things that are already out there. You may want to have somebody look at the wording of this proposed handbook and the wording of the ordinances so they're congruent, so that nobody's putting themselves at risk by saying somebody else's slanderous behavior. The more consistent you are with the law, probably the better off everybody is. There was that, and then I think I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thanks. All right, Patricia Morrison. Okay. Oh, you're, okay. Mike, well,
I
maybe she left.
I know.
Come on up.
Okay, so I did put together well, happy belated Veterans Day to all our fellow veterans, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I really appreciate it, and I do respect your positions and your time. I put together a little presentation I'll hand out to you if it's okay. This is on item H on the Pamea June permit. And I know I'm a little late to the board. I just got off the phone with Kristen Haley from the GLO regarding the dunes. My heart is in protecting the dunes. Okay, and what's happening, I guess, the first picture there, you'll see, I was really irate when I saw the builders driving through the dunes, and there was no permit at the time. So that was stopped immediately. But I still have my concerns. So the package is kind of moot because I feel like it's already been decided. GLO has approved the dune permit as far as their end goes. It's up to you all now. Okay, but I did really study the coastal management plan. Okay, and I'm very concerned. I've been through Harvey. I own several properties in Corpus. I had 250 units in the bluff that lost 6 buildings due to Harvey. And I stayed with it all throughout that. So I'm very familiar with Mother Nature and her acts. And I'm very concerned about Pamea cutting into the dunes and it being approved so readily. I just think we should think about its impact and what could happen in the future because we don't have the emergency response that we need.
Excuse me, what was your address?
So, oh, I'm sorry, 745 Silver.
Selfish?
Huh?
Did you say selfish?
Silverleaf?
Oh, Silverleaf. Boy,
That's
did I get
sunflower,
that.
right?
Yes.
Okay.
I had the best house in there. So. Okay, some of these points I just wanted to make on, and I got this directly from the coastal management plan. If you get a second to read through them, it talks about the impact of messing with the dunes and what happens when you do that. So we are a barrier island. This is a coastal management plan. The city has the ultimate authority to make the decision on what we cut, what we don't, what we mitigate. The Pamea plan, here's a map showing the critical dunes and where they want to cut into with 1,000-foot dune protection line there. There are several homes past that. The only thing I see, when you look at this map, if you could please take a look at the landward side, there is so much room there to move those homes from the dunes and cutting into the dunes. And if it were just thought out a little bit better, we would not even have to mess with the dunes. There would be no interference whatsoever and no backlash afterwards with Mother Nature's maybe quite harsh. So anyway, I put this together. Like I said, I think it's kind of moot at this point because GLO has approved it. And I think, you know, there's a lot riding on it. Everybody wants to be friends with everyone. I understand development. I'm a businesswoman. I want to get along with everyone too, but I do want everybody to really, really contemplate about, I know the direct report A is going with development. Can't stop it. And it'll be wonderful. It really will. But let's save what we can to preserve ourselves. I mean, you mess with the dunes, Mother Nature will come back and hit you. So we all know. Anyway, that's really all I have to say. And I thank you. And I thank you all for serving. So have a good day.
Thank you. Okay, I have 3 people left, all of them for agenda item P. Would you like to wait to speak during that time? And that's Cliff Strain, Leroy Hoskins, and Ashley Harris. Is that right? Wait to the item. Okay, so during the presentation. All right. I know, I haven't gotten to her yet. I'm talking about the people that were next on the list, okay? Luke, would you like to speak now?
Sure.
Okay.
Luke Daly, 619 East Avenue B. I brought you 119 people supporting the Old Town Preservation Advisory Board and their work. And here's what they all say. We, the undersigned, appreciate, applaud, and support the members of the Port Aransas Old Town Preservation Advisory Board and their work to keep the historical architecture of our town recognized and intact. Districts such as this give communities a common identity and self-respect, imparting that to residents and visitors alike. We ask the city council and staff to give them encouragement and cooperation. I love this community so much and appreciate the board's efforts to keep it unique and special. And this is, some of these came in by email because petition was just started on Sunday at noon. And of course, you don't want to interrupt religious observance like the Dallas Cowboys football game. So I'm going to hand this to you to pass around. And I hope you will support, encourage, and help the Old Town Advisory Board in their work, because these are many, many people all in the district and all in support of protecting the historical integrity of our town. And it's important. It's important to people, and it sets us aside from many other places. And that's why people come to Port A, because we're not just like everywhere else. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so that is it for citizen comments. We'll move to item 4, the consent agenda. Does anybody have any items that they wish to pull from the consent agenda? You have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent agenda as presented. Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Fran, please call the roll.
Yes.
Councilmember Seeloff,
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers,
Yes.
Councilmember Krueger,
Yes.
Councilmember Park,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Owens,
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, item number 5, items for consideration. We'll start with item F. It's a resolution adopting the 2022 Parks and Open Space Master Plan.
So I just am here to introduce Kimberly Miller. She's the Director of Resiliency Planning for Half and Associates. We've been working with them since January alongside many members of the community and our Master Plan Advisory Committee to draft this plan that's before you. The paper version is Kimberly's presentation. Ashley Bennis is also here from Half. If you have, let's just let Kimberly do her thing and we'll be here for questions afterwards.
Thanks.
Thank you. I'm Kimberly Miller, and as Colleen said, I've had the privilege to be working with the city since January on preparing your Parks and Open Space Master Plan. It's been a fantastic experience. I thank all the members of the council who helped contribute to this process as well. Colleen and David for providing the leadership behind what we've discussed. So let me present and kind of give an overview of the plan for you today. I'll kind of just page you through when we need to go to the next page. We're probably ready to go ahead and hit the next one. This page is really an overview slide of generally what we were looking at the parks, what we were doing in terms of doing an inventory, understanding what your recreational programming is like, and just generally getting a sense of your park system as a whole. So everything we're talking about is looking at the entire park system and understanding what you have in terms of acreage, services, amenities, and all that sort of thing to provide you a baseline that puts you in good stead for applying for grant funding and determining what your own expenditures would be sort of out of pocket, bonded, and that sort of thing over the course of the next 10 years. So this is a big, broad picture look at a 10-year investment in what you could do with your park system. Let's go next. So we've also been really lucky to be working on this at an exciting time in the city of Port Aransas, because we know the Harbor Master Plan is going on right next to Roberts Point Park. The Chamber of Commerce has been working on the wayfinding sign. The comprehensive plan is going on, and we've been collaborating with Freese and Nichols on some of the elements of the plan that touch places there. So it's been a great time to be doing planning work in Port Aransas. Next slide. And this is just a snapshot of the community outreach process. We've had a steering committee that's helped accompany us through the entire process, including members of the council. We had a public survey that was answered by about 286 households. That seems like a pretty precise number. We had 4 community design sessions. I'm going to show you some of the outcome of the community design sessions a little bit later in this conversation, and an open house in which people had the chance in March to come together and tell us what their priorities were and what their needs were for improvements in the park system over the next several years. Next slide, please. And this is a snapshot of everything that we were assessing when we were looking at the park system. We were looking at your general facilities, the type of playgrounds you have, signage, sports fields, and this was kind of benchmarked, which is what a parks plan requires, to what national parks and recreation standards would be. So we looked at every single park and looked at all the elements of the park and used that kind of as a baseline for recommendations came out of the process. Next slide, please. So with the assistance of staff and community and the advisory board, we identified 5 goals for the parks plan. And so the first one is really balancing resident and visitor needs. We know what a pressure it is on you all to serve not only your own residents, but to also balance those needs with all the people who want to come and experience Port Aransas over time. So that was one of the first things that we identified as a goal. Making the community more safe and connected was the second goal. So the connection talks about how you get from place to place, how you connect your parks. And we'll talk a little bit about that when we look at trails as well, but also starting to look at like, how do you reach parks in a safe way? How do you make sure that people play and engage with their environment in a safe and happy way? Environmental stewardship is really the foundation of your park system in so many ways. One of the things that we were really excited to see when we started comparing your acres per person ratio is how high you were with respect to all the surrounding communities. And that's really kind of grounded in your environmental stewardship that the nature preserve represents. Designing for an active life cycle is really important too, because you have people from 8 to 80 who are here and in the community. A lot of communities don't offer those recreational opportunities for people at either end of the age spectrum. And so that's been kind of a goal in all the recommendations, is looking at how can people really be active? How can they really be engaged at any stage of their life? And then resilient design is the 5th goal. So part of this ties into what you've got in goal 3 already. You all have a fantastic dune system on the beach side, and on the bay side, the nature preserve and other properties really provide a lot of protection for the community that a lot of other coastal communities don't have. You've got your nature doing your work to protect your houses, and your businesses, your streets, your infrastructure. And so that resilient design is one of the ways we were looking at parks, is not only parks themselves and all the enjoyment we get out of them, but how do they fortify the city and how do they prepare you guys to meet new challenges that we've seen with the storm cycles that have come over the last several years. Next slide. This is just kind of an inventory of where your parks are. One thing that we found out is that there were a lot of parks that people weren't aware of. There were some parks that people went to over and over again, but they might not know where all the parks were. And so that was an important part of the discovery process. And I think will be part of the wayfinding process as we move forward too, is how do we find our way to our parks to enjoy them? Next slide. So I was just mentioning resilient parks. We did take a look at what your floodplains were and what your natural assets were in terms of wetlands to figure out where you might want to situate different types of activities. And I know that the Nature Preserve is already moving forward with some ways to strengthen, fortify the protections to the marsh with the renourishment of the marsh in that area as well. Next slide. So I'm going to show you the 2 concepts. I talked about the 4 design workshops that we had in our public engagement. So let me talk about Roberts Point Park first, and let's go to the next slide. So the way that we approached Roberts Point Park, which is already a real signature park that everybody thinks of when they think of Port Aransas, is to approach it as a series of rooms. So the first room, if you look at the far left of this slide, is a place that we suggest that you'd really get a lot of benefit about creating an amphitheater in that area. We know you have an amphitheater already, but you've got a lot of flexible space where people can play soccer already. We know you're already using all this space for, barbecue festivals and concerts. So we think that the city could really benefit from that sort of first entry room to the park, having an amphitheater that could accommodate a lot bigger crowds. And so moving towards the second room of the park, that's where you see the play structure. It's kind of looks like a bowling pin, almost the way that it's drawn here. That whole area with the pavilions would be your play area. That's kind of an all ages play area. So in that space, we know you're needing to replace the playground. That's really an urgent issue right now. Reconfiguring that playground so you've got the small children's play space and the older children's play space kind of in the same location, and then potentially adding something that appeals to teens and young, adults of any age, by potentially adding like a basketball court in there, making that really a unified all ages play space. If you move to the third room, we propose that the loop drive that's there right now actually be maintained, but be kind of moved backward. So you connect the play area with the point, which we know is really the recognizable destination for the whole park. So let's go to the next slide and I'll show you what we mean in a little bit more detail. So speaking through the play area, that's kind of that second room here in the park. So if you move from the play area and you stop the conflict between children and adults who are crossing that roadway there, you create that green space that's good for gathering, but also connects people and encourages them to go all the way to the point. At the point, there's an opportunity to do something that's really enhances the destination, creates a sculptural form that echoes what we're seeing as we're occupying the park already. So we've got boats passing there all the time. So we think this would be a great opportunity to do a maritime kind of architectural feature. So you could kind of raise and elevate a promontory and a lookout point, a great Instagram point. But it's also a chance to incorporate some water play into the park with an interactive fountain. So you could combine a structural architectural element in that area with an interactive fountain that would allow people to go out there and both take great pictures, but also let their kids play and interact with the fountain in that area. So all of this is the first stage of the concept. There's design work that goes into, what does a point with a fountain look like, right? What exactly does the play space look like? That the next step is kind of to move into that direction of, now that we know what people want, now that we know where they want it, how exactly does it occur? So let's go to the next slide. So this is one of our inspirations for how we were looking at the play space. This is also in a maritime community. It's in St. Petersburg, Florida. It's a custom designed salt and sand spray resistant play feature that could be custom designed for this area. So this is kind of an inspirational figure for how we might go forward with creating an iconic play space. That molded poured in place surface is also really good for inundation, saltwater cleanup after a storm. Next slide. So let's look at community park next. Next slide, one more. Thank you. So there's a lot that's already been done at Community Point and a community park. The work that you all did on the ball fields after the hurricane was tremendous. You've done a lot of work on the turf management that was really, it's allowed those fields to maintain and survive well. So that's not really where we would put most of our energy. I think we wanted to add a few things at Community Park that would really enhance what the experience of the park is right now and add services to the community as a whole. So one thing that we would do, all the yellow area is a new walking trail. So you have more of a figure 8 walking loop that would connect the park. And you can get more steps in when you're going to Community Park. So let's look at the next slide and let's look at kind of the heart of what we propose could happen here. So over and over again, in all the public engagement, we heard how much people need a multi-purpose recreational center, something that would allow people, again, from the 8 to 80 range, begin to talk about What kinds of activities they want to see. How can you bring the community together? How can you create a gathering place that encourages people to really visit and enjoy community park? And so with that space, and this is the gray structure that's kind of in the center that has a plaza for gathering in front of it. With that space, then you have a jumping off point for all the other activities in the park. So that could be a space where you could incorporate your locker room now, which really needs to be updated. You could have a destination for your parks office. And then you can also create the kind of spaces in there that the community really needs in terms of indoor year-round recreational activities, which now we see is really something that the community is asking for and could really benefit from. The parking areas around the heart, that's okay. I'll just tell you real quickly, the parking areas around the heart of the park could then be kind of segregated. So you have people who are going to, sports events on one side and people who are using some of the other facilities of the park on the other. So that would kind of minimize the conflict between the different user populations. This space here is next to the community center. So with the acquisition of that space, you have the opportunity to really expand what can be done at the community center by providing more parking, but you also have more gathering and more outdoor space. Because the city has so much parkland, but not that much that's what we call traditionally a neighborhood park. This is an opportunity to have a very small kind of pocket neighborhood park that people could walk to easily, their kids could play in. So this space we envision as being something that's very multifunctional and could expand what you can already do in the community center and the museum next door. You could use it to manage some flooding as well, just some sort of on-site frequent flooding. Let's go to the next slide. So when I talked about safe and connected as one of the goals, we heard from a number of different people how interested they were in being able to walk and bike more safely. So there are a lot of people who are going to bike no matter what. They helped us identify what those trails and connections should be. We worked with the comprehensive planning team to identify some things that we all agreed would be great ways to connect the community with 2 loops that would particularly connect in between trails. One that would be for schools to, kind of reinforce that safe routes to school. Then we also identified in this plan some additional beach connection points and some places where people could really benefit from having primary pedestrian and bicycle corridors off your primary streets and onto less traffic streets where it'd be more appropriate for them. Next slide. All right, so top 10, let's get to this now. This is just kind of a list of the top 10 recommendations. So this list is not in, it's not in alphabetical order. It's not necessarily in the exact order that we would move, but there are about 100 recommendations, Colleen, is that where we got to? I gave you, yeah. So generally when we do these, we look at like, what are the really small recommendations that you could have the wins on really quickly? And then what are the big aspirational things? So these top 10 are really the big aspirational elements that came out of the plan. So they include Roberts Point Park renovations, which high priority is the replacing the park, multi-purpose parks office and recreation facility, a parkland dedication ordinance. We can talk about that more in a second. A community center neighborhood park. We just looked at a preliminary design for that. The 33-acre nature park and paddling center that you all have dedicated the land for. We've already kind of worked with you on looking at where the wetlands are, what the opportunities are for park design there. Wayfinding interpretive signage to make sure people know what the whole park system is, not just their favorite park. Enhancing those park trails and connections like the image that I showed you a second ago. Expanding and updating aquatic facilities because there is so much aquatic demand and there's still people could benefit from even having an additional pool. On the resilience side, keeping that nature preserve aesthetic of if there's an opportunity to acquire new parkland that helps mitigate flooding, keeping our eyes open for those opportunities and expanding surf rescue services. So I'm going to conclude on 2 slides. So the next slide is just what the different revenue sources are, both from the city side and the grant funding side. you guys are probably fairly familiar with your own revenue sources already, but you know, they consist of general funds, sales tax, the Recreational Development Corporation, hotel motel tax. And there's some funds that are set aside specifically for the Nature Preserve and Beach Fund. And you do work with developers to do some parkland dedication, but we think there's some improvements that could probably be made to your ordinance that would make it a little bit more profitable. And then on the state and federal side, one of the reasons that we did this plan was to help you prepare for access to more parks and wildlife grants. Boating access grants could help things like that paddling park that we're working on. Recreational trails grants, transportation alternatives, green ribbon funding, all of those could go towards trails, roadways, bikeways improvements. You already are working with the General Land Office on a number of different things. They have a couple of funding sources that are regularly available between the Erosion Planning Act and the Coastal Management Planning Fund. And then, you know, FEMA offers some grants as well that you could kind of double up on some of your park services. Storm shelter in particular is one thing that could potentially be used for some of your facilities. So let's go to the next one, and I'm going to show you kind of how we re-ranked the top 10 in more chronological order in terms of what we think is achievable, and also kind of talk about some of the costs. So there's an immediate amount that I believe you all have budgeted for Roberts Point Park renovations, which would be looking at the playground and some other elements there. It's close to the $1 to $2 million range. I may not have that quite right. All the improvements that we were showing, we did a cost estimate for everything. So remember, this is 10 years, but we were looking at total improvements of about $7.8 million. Again, remember, this is 10 years. The new nature park and paddling access in the community center neighborhood park, both of those are probably in the, once a design construction is completed, in the $500,000 to $700,000 range. You're already expanding your surf rescue services, so we encourage you to continue on that important safety improvement. Wayfinding and interpretive signage, parks, I think, just got a cost from the Chamber of Commerce of $570K for that. Parks and trails connections, that's really kind of based on doing a detailed parks and trails look, and that's running about $12 to $15 a linear foot. So that would depend on how much investment you wanted to make. We priced out a multi-purpose parks and office recreation facility at about $8.5 million. That depends on when it's constructed. That depends on how large it is. But like I said, this was about 25,000 square feet based on some recent pricing for similar facilities that we think that you guys would benefit from. Adding an additional pool and updating those aquatic facilities, probably in the $1 to $2 million range. Acquiring new parkland, market cost, really. And then I mentioned the ordinance improvement on your parkland dedication ordinance. That's something that generally yields in the range of $700 to $1,000 a lot. So that would be a policy improvement. So laying all that out and laying out all those big costs and all those big dreams, we just wanted to turn it back over to you all to discuss what's most important to you and sort of how you see the priorities at this point as we wrap up this discussion.
Thank you. That was excellent. A lot of good ideas. Dave, what are your thoughts? I mean, some of the ones, I guess what I'm thinking here is if you look at some of the smaller ones, they might be feasible in relatively short term.
Are we gonna use, what set of numbers are we using to make adjustments to the park dedication fee program?
So that number is based on kind of what happens as a general rule, like what we're generally expecting. So that would be a separate policy decision that would involve kind of what the cost of what the market would bear, what the cost of providing the additional parkland would be.
Is there anything you see in here that would not fall under hot tax fundable?
Oh, I'd have to look at it closer. I mean,
there's other pots of money that some of this
Yeah.
stuff can come out of. It doesn't
Sure.
all have to come out of hot tax.
It
yeah,
definitely
like,
does.
well, like the parks office and rec facility, you know, that's
It's gonna
something
be a
that,
bond.
that's something that you're gonna have to really play with, depending on what kind of features you're putting on it. You know, like what was put to the voters, what was it, 3 years ago, was a multi-purpose park facility and offices. But that's the version that had the expanded competitive gymnasium. So it, you know, it depends on what you're targeting. If that's what you're, you know, if you're looking for that kind of thing, it opens up the room for hot tax use. Whereas if a Parks and Rec facility is more of a kind of a, you know, I'll call it a mom and pop home version where it's weight rooms and offices for Parks and Rec, then you're really getting away from being able to throw hot tax dollars at it.
So like a community center, number 2, where it's like 500K, or 3, community center neighborhood park.
That one I think is gonna, you mean like the one, I think that's a hot tax park.
Yeah,
that's like
the one over there. Okay.
So that's what I was gonna ask is
Yeah.
what size that rec center is and what it was gonna hold and. Is that, are we still just using the original parking lot?
No.
I mean, it's, you know, the plan that they proposed, you know, it spots the rec center. It does spot the rec center in the parking lot, which I think is great, because right now with the park, the way it is now, you have the aquatics separated out from the rest of the park with a parking lot, which isn't great, right? I mean, that's not great that you have to walk through a parking lot feature. So this concept of bisecting the parking lot is really great, because you get the connectivity from the beginning of the park all the way through into your field. So I think that's a great concept. And that facility, I mean, that's, you know, she said 25,000 feet. That's a pretty big facility. It really depends on it really depends on how you guys want to fund it. That is going to be the main driving mechanism to what you build.
And I'd also say if you want to take on some of the multiple smaller ones, if you really want to focus on huge ones, right?
Yeah.
That's another. I mean, because some of the smaller ones I do think can be taken care of pretty quick, and that'd get a lot of these top 10 out.
Mhm.
I mean, the top 10 is not all equal top 10, right? I mean, 8.5 million versus 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, so like I was talking about with the funding, like part of the reason of preparing the parks plan is so that you're eligible for some of those other sources of funding as well. I know you all are incredibly successful funding grant managers, and sometimes that's more of a burden than it is a blessing. But that is part of what, you know, you'd be able to apply for now. With having these opportunities articulated. And so this is one of the opportunities and one of the priorities that the city put high on the list. So.
I think as well, I mean, some of these things are already kind of in motion.
Yes, ma'am.
So I think that you prioritize based on what you already have in motion,
Mhm.
right? And then find the money and the source from there.
That's absolutely right.
Because, you know, you're not going to put off something that is already being worked on. I mean, in particular, I mean, the Roberts Point Park renovations, you know, that's a huge price tag, but yet we're already doing so much renovation there now. It would make more sense if we're going to tear it up. We might as well, you know, look and see what the best way to do that is, all at one time or you know, in stages. But to me, I mean, I think these are all clearly important, and you could argue either way which one is, you know, more needed or not, or which one's more obtainable, you know, based on funding sources. But I mean, there's some great ideas here, and like I said, some that are already kind of in motion. So we need to figure
So we
that.
are expanding surf rescue,
Right.
the building's designed. Hopefully we can be moving forward with getting that built. The 35 acre paddling, you know, we have the property, you know, we have some prelim concepts, so that could move forward. The community center park, we purchased the property. We're looking at the street closure, is going to P and Z in
This
2
month.
weeks. And then it'll be back to council December for first reading. So that's moving forward. The wayfinding interpretive signage is moving forward. yeah, so, we're making some good progress on a lot of those items.
And what most communities do with the really big items, it's hard to phase a multipurpose center, but with Robert's point, you could use those rooms as you're facing. So you could do this renovation in one area, apply for a grant to support it. And while that area is being reconstructed, you could get ready for, next year or the year after, you get ready to do the second room. So you can kind of move through it that way. You don't have to eat the elephant in one bite.
Yep. Have we investigated like on the paddling trail? Did you look at TPWD at all or
Have we looked at what?
Texas Parks and Wildlife? I think the one that's across on the island across the fair. That's that little kayak trail there. That's all Texas Parks and Wildlife, I believe. Correct?
Yeah, I know Ray and,
Yeah, it's a paddling trail, and then there's a Mustang Island paddling trail.
Right.
So we actually have discussed with Park and Wildlife adding it to the Mustang Island paddling
Mhm.
access to their
Yeah.
maps, so all the paddling people.
And would that mean adding it to the map? Would that mean we get funding then? Or-
No, but there's something is available through that we wanted to use that route.
Okay.
It's all-
And that is one of the gaps in the amenities that people definitely paddle from here, but having a dedicated map for that spot for that's definitely something people want to see.
Well, so the next step, obviously, we're not gonna choose projects tonight and move forward. But it's it is a lot of information, but it's great information and it's great to see that we're moving forward and that we've got some direction. And so what would you see in the next step?
Well, I think the next step is to, move for the adoption of the plan, right? And then once the plan's adopted, then I think probably prioritizing what you want to start with first. As David mentioned, there's a lot that's already in the works. So you may already have some funds allocated for it. Finalizing the funding for those, that's one of the early things you could do. Getting ready for, if you're considering a multipurpose center, getting ready for what that looks like, because this is a location, we've designed where we think it should go and what the benefits of that would be, but it doesn't have the program in it yet.
Right.
So understanding what you put in that space, which right now is a block, that's really something that would need to happen pretty quickly, because if you design the program and you begin designing the building, you still got another couple of years before you're actually able to start construction. So
Sure.
I think kind of that's probably an early priority as well.
So we got pretty far on that before, when we proposed the bond on the sports complex, that today's point that failed a couple of years ago by a very narrow margin, but we actually went and paid and had, a building designed and was not in this exact location, but close by. So if that is something that we want to prioritize moving forward with, which I think is, probably a good idea, then do we go back to some of that design? Do we just scrap all that work? Do we get them engaged?
Was it the same size building, Wendy?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
It's a
but
little larger.
It was a large enough facility that, because the funding mechanism was not hot tax and it wasn't general fund money. And so, we had to be able to make sure that, it was funded in a way that it did meet kind of all the guidelines. And so it included multiple courts, offices, rooms, and it wasn't just a community rec center. It was a full-fledged sports complex that would also, kind of cover all the bases. So.
Would that double, if it goes big enough over there, could that replace what we do in this building and then this can become more city offices? I mean, was it going to be built so if we wanted to have functions that we have here?
oh, Civic Center, no.
Okay.
But are you still considering it being a sportsplex?
It depends on how you guys want to pay for it.
Yeah. We want to
Because that's
start
kind of how
If you
they,
guys want to
that's why they
target,
voted it down.
if you guys are targeting the 2%, it's 2% hot tax, right? It's, oh, there was?
Well, I thought so. We had a deadline.
Yeah, we had a deadline for
We
it
had a
back then,
deadline.
because it was a special fund. It wasn't using our hot tax out of our budget. Remember, it was a special appropriation. It was increasing. It was increasing in and adding on a special tax.
Right.
So I don't know, we'd have to,
And would we want it back to where the original spot that we had planned?
I think that's part of the planning. I mean, I think that's what we have to do is figure out.
So I mean, we really saw having this at the heart so that you're close to the ball fields, you're close to the pickleball, you're close to it makes the park work a lot better. So that's our proposal from a design perspective, how it would work better. A lot of times people also in the design process, when they're working through what you want a multi-purpose center to do, is they also do some engagement around that public input into that, kind of following up on what people identified in the parks plan is another piece of what people bring in, so that you're sure that you're meeting what the needs are and what the desires are of folks. So not just the design, but also a little bit more of the program.
So this was the original spot before?
It was very close. The old spot was a little bit to the, yeah.
But I see the benefit in that is because having been a parent and
Yeah.
children of all ages, and when you have one at the pool and one's playing Little League and you're trying to figure out who's running across the parking lot when cars are running it's not a safe environment. So
That's exactly the idea. And that's why there's a plaza in front of the center. That's why there's like an improved play space there. There's a shade pavilion backing up to the skate park. So there are lots of places for people to keep eyes on their kids. Or even their elderly parents, if they need to kind of running around that whole space. So, yeah. Are there some more questions that I can answer for you all too, as you deliberate?
having more, I mean, I'm sure as we dive into it.
Well, I mean, if you build something like that, are we gonna be able to fund it every month? I mean, we're gonna be able to pay for it to run it?
We gotta do it through hot tax.
Yeah.
Yeah, it boils down to, it boils down to what you're using it for. So the more you expand it, the more you get different pots of money to
So,
pay
I
for
mean,
your
we don't
maintenance and operation.
Know what we're-
The tighter you draw it, the more focused you are on operating out of general fund and park dedication fees and your RDC funding. So
Sure.
you have those three pots. If you go with the smaller version, and then as you expand it, you start adding more and more hot tax, which is probably your best pot of money. So it really depends on what you guys think is the appetite of the community and how the taxpayer wants to pay for it.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, the local taxpayer wouldn't pay for it if it were an increased hot tax.
Right, you get a little, you start getting the more of the, when you're talking the off-season sports venue, the more of that concept you grow. The pot of money for your taxpayer goes down and the payment to your hot tax goes up. So it's where you guys think that balance is and what will flow.
So
But
like the mayor
because
was
if it's
saying-
go to the vote, it's what's your appetite? What do you think's gonna pass?
Yeah, like the mayor was saying, I mean, we're not gonna solve it tonight, so do we?
No.
Working group,
Yeah.
and set up a meeting, a specific meeting for this possibly? Do we get
I think we
recommendations
still
from
gotta
staff?
get this thing finished and passed first, and then.
Yeah, obviously we
Yeah.
gotta approve the
Still, yeah.
plan that's presented, and this plan has a little more information than what was in our packet, so
Yeah.
we need to,
Yeah,
I think,
this is
approve
great.
this,
Good information.
And then I think we go to the next step. I mean, some of this stuff is probably in the comp plan as well. I mean, it's kind of, we're going through all these things.
So if we're
Already.
approving the park plan and then we talk more about the center and what it's gonna be and how big it's gonna be and all that.
That's a ways down the road.
Okay.
Right, so everything that's today is about setting your vision for what happens over
Okay.
the next 10 years, and some of the things are. Well, everything is at the recommendation level, so it's like a work program for Colleen, which is why she didn't want me to give her 175 recommendations for the next 10 years.
10 years.
She needs an office.
It's a work program for Colleen, and it's also sort of helping you guys think about what's your capital improvements plan you want it to be for the next 10 years, and it sets you up for grant funding. So that's really the purpose of this plan and the nuts and bolts detail of how any specific individual facility or park is designed is the follow-on work.
Okay.
So
So we
Okay.
need a motion to approve the resolution
Yes.
of this park plan. Is that the way I'm reading this?
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to adopt the 2022 Parks and Open Space Master Plan as presented.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Fran, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Seeloff,
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers,
Yes.
Councilmember Krueger,
Yes.
Councilmember Park,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Owen,
Yes.
Mayor Moore,
Yes,
motion carried.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very good. No. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Kimberly.
All right. Item G, discuss and take action to confirm dune permit BFDP 22001810 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan. The applicant proposes to reroute the footpath in the area and stabilize with a Moby mat. Applicant is Rutledge Haggard, property location 1107 11th Street, the Pelican Condominiums and Beach House.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. I think for those that have been around a little bit on council, you've probably had seen a previous dune permit that involved a Moby mat. So this is our second such application. It's kind of an interesting concept. Again, just as the name implies, it is a mat. That's a high kind of a high technologically advanced type of mat, but it does go, as the application says, over an existing footpath, and there appears to be a lot of positive ideas behind the Moby mat. One, it stabilizes what could theoretically remain a footpath, continue to erode, continue to extend in a wider and wider fashion, but more importantly, it provides a little bit safer, more accessible method of transportation over that footpath. It does require some maintenance, but again, it is a concept that seems to be gaining more popularity here, obviously by this being our second application, but is reasonably tried and tested in South Padre, where you find they've been using this type of material for a while. So the application again is very straightforward. It's the existing footpath. David has identified. The Pelican House is a portion of Pelican Condominium and is an element of that project as a whole. And so, like I said, the project engineer is here. The General Land Office did offer their approval, and although a little novel, it is consistent with our coastal management plan. So I think several of us are here to answer any questions. Otherwise, staff recommends approval.
Right, any questions or discussion for Rick?
Hey, Rick, would you agree that an elevated boardwalk would be superior for dune protection as opposed to a Moby mat?
I don't know, Councilman. I'm probably knowledgeable as I like to think I am. Probably wouldn't be really qualified. I think your concept is probably. I think the concept is there. I think an elevated boardwalk in a lot of instances certainly more advantageous than cuts through the dunes. This simply stabilizes what could continue as a footpath forever. The General Land Office really takes no authority over footpaths. So they could continue to use it, expand it, walk all over the place. So
So
I do think there's a good argument.
Yeah, maybe not the best, but better than what we've got currently is what you're saying.
I think I think that's a good way that I would perceive it. Certainly, I think the engineers in the GLO recognizes that it's certainly not a bad option because it does stabilize that. It does require some maintenance. It's a little bit obviously probably a little less costly than a wooden boardwalk and all that goes with it. But I think that and again, unlike a wooden boardwalk, it is removable. So the expense that they incur in putting it down is a little bit more. They are able to protect it a little bit more by its removal in the event of a flood event or a storm. So I think that's the other advantage.
Yeah, they recommend rolling them up, pulling them up during the storm.
Yep, and that's Councilman Park. Do you recall during one of the last council sessions, we had that prior one? I thought that we had said, hey, there's going to be like a limit on how long they're going to keep it there, and then they were going to build a boardwalk. Is my memory wrong on that
For
one?
that particular
Dave looked at
property,
it.
yes, yeah, it was a different
Yes, it
property.
is.
That's-
Was a
That was
different
one of the stipulations that we did get for that property. This was an interim thing.
That was an interim thing for them,
For that,
right?
because they were, that's the direction they were.
Because they'd already bought it and we were like, yeah, we don't want you to waste their money. You're right. It was like a lot cheaper than the boardwalk option, which they couldn't do, but it was still a reasonable expense. I don't know how much, do you
Correct.
recall how much these are, Rick, or
I
like
do
40K or
not,
something?
Do the engineers have any idea?
But they're just putting
Boy, have
this
we,
on
have
top
we
of.
officially
Yeah,
introduced?
this
is a
big,
big-
officially
Yeah, there's
introduced
one
you?
there already. Yeah.
Yeah, but they
Uh,
recommend doing vegetation around them and certain maintenance on them, and they said the other property has done real well with
Come on
that,
up.
so.
Come
uh, But there are certain things they have to do. with it.
16.5 foot long section, it's $830.
16.
This is Chloe, help me with your last
I
name.
can't put.
Chloe Norton, with Urban Engineering, and we've worked with Chloe now here recently on, some of the dune permitting among other things, so. Welcome to City Council.
If I can answer any of your questions, let us know.
So this Moby mat is on the elevation, is gonna go up 20 feet up and over.
Yes, it's gonna be laid on top of the existing.
So do we ever have to have boardwalks again, or are people gonna start putting Moby
That's
mats?
to the
up and down.
We're gonna have a little blue
clients
mats.
themselves. That's up to the property
All over
owner,
the
what they want to provide their residents. That's up to them.
And they do get rolled up if the city says there's a hurricane coming, they have to go roll it up.
That's what it
'Cause I
says.
saw, that's one of the conditions that they roll it up, so
I don't know that I want to take on the responsibility of,
Mhm.
I'm just
in,
asking.
in advance of a storm, having to remember that, but, I think there's an incentive on their part to do so because of the cost.
I mean, if they don't take it up, it's just gonna get buried
Right,
in
it's
whatever
there
gets
too.
left and they have to keep it maintained. Okay.
I mean, much like a boardwalk, you know, unless it's reached a state where it's unsafe, we don't really, you know,
No, we
dictate
don't
them,
tell them to take it down.
you know, shoveling out sand and other things that come along with the boardwalk as well, so.
But you couldn't just put wood down, right, Rick, on this, like make a boardwalk with no elevation. There are requirements on GLO where you have to have, what is it? 2:1 elevation of a
The
boardwalk. or something like
recommendation
that?
is 1-to-1 for every
Okay.
length, you have a foot of height.
Uh-huh.
And as I can recall in the last decade that I've been here, that most of them can achieve that. They, in fact, actually, they've done even better than that. I've, you know, looking at some of the older ones that predate me, we used to see a lot more that actually utilized cuts through the dunes with that boardwalk.
Yeah, my only
Um,
question, and I'm not trying to be argumentative or rhetorical, I'm just, it seems crazy because you would say, hey, you can't just put a boardwalk straight on the ground, right? You'd have to have an elevated boardwalk. We couldn't just have some boards put there, but we're gonna allow a Moby mat to just be put there. Is
Yeah,
that a-
the only, again, I'm not a design
Mhm.
professional, the boards I would think would be a little bit more problematic because of their material.
Yeah, but I mean, you could not, you're the engineer on this one, you could not just put a wooden pathway, right? Directly on the sand?
The GLO would shoot it down. and-
So that's gonna be shut down, but this Moby mat is gonna be okay. So that's where I'm having a little bit of
Right.
So
conflict
there is
here.
an existing footpath through the dunes that it can be traversed throughout. So the Moby map will limit the foot traffic to that
Sure.
area. There is no reason for pedestrians to go outside of that footpath because it's more difficult for them to walk on it.
No
This is in
arguments.
the interest of the dune system. If you can see that area where it's eroded that vegetation out. That area is proposed to be refilled with any vegetation that is impacted with laying that moving that down.
Right.
And we're gonna be
Oh, it
protecting that
says-
area in the future by limiting the pedestrian foot traffic to that specific area.
No,
And
the
revegetate.
Doing something is, I think,
Right.
required. I
It-
fully agree. I
it-
just
The moving
don't.
map does have, it's a woven fabric.
Mhm.
It will let sunlight rain through. The vegetation won't be able to grow because of the pressure of your
Right.
footsteps on that earth, which it's not growing there currently.
And with respect to GLO's opinion, just for information, right now, there's several amendments to natural resource code that the GLO, we've commented on it, that the GLO is considering it. One of the ramifications of these amendments would be for some municipalities that have that don't have easy access to the water's edge. One of the things the GLO has even mentioned in these in the possibilities are MobiMats for some municipalities to accomplish that accessibility. So they've recognized that it's a viable means, of protecting, but yet still providing that accessibility that wouldn't otherwise be there.
Sure.
And as far as your point of laying boards down, that's considerably more difficult to remove once you've laid it down. This MobiMat is,
No, I'm just, my only point was, it seems like they're giving you contradictory rulings, like, okay, it's okay to put a MobiMat down, but it's not okay to put boards right down on the ground. So that was my point.
Yeah, I think boards just are more prone to, my experience would be they're more prone to flotation and everything else as opposed to a thinner subject that's permeable, lighter weight and is fastened down. So I don't know. It's a good question. We've not had anybody propose it, but there's a chance
Personally,
that if
I will tell you right now, I just don't want to be prejudiced here, but I really don't like the look of the MobiMat as much as like a boardwalk. I think that would be a bad situation. And like Councilman said, are we going to get into a situation where we just have people never build boardwalks anymore and they're simply going to always put a MobiMat down?
But
I would
yeah.
make towards that is that I think that more of the customers would build the boardwalks if they could, and I think that it's a better amenity to have a boardwalk rather than a MobiMat. I think you can have more gradual slopes with your boardwalk than the MobiMat is going to be going over a very steep elevation. So
Yeah, it's going to be.
it's just to aid in the foot traffic and to limit where the pedestrians can go.
Yeah, I think, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but to me, the concept of a MobiMat is only going to work where you already have a natural footpath. So as someone who gets a permit to put in a boardwalk over dunes that have no access whatsoever, they're not gonna, and I wouldn't think GLO or we would want to approve them to go lay a MobiMat over, vegetated dunes. Now, a path that's already vacant, that's sand, MobiMat makes sense, in that regard. But I would think those others who are choosing to have a path would choose a boardwalk because they actually have to build and transverse over those dunes.
yeah, and I think the GLO's opinion of that scenario, Mayor, would be entirely different than it was in this one. Because again, when you look at what's there now, you can figure that a significant portion of that will revegetate and offer the protection that right now it's not doing because it's prone to erosion and blowing and everything else. So if they narrow that, you restore a significant part of that currently unvegetated, unprotected area. So I think that's the plus side to it, is it, you actually end up with a better outcome than without it.
Yep.
And at the end of the day, that would kind of be my thought, is it's still better with it than it is without it. But that's up to you.
It's been sitting there unused since the hurricane, right?
Well, the footpath is being
Pretty
used.
much.
Yeah.
It has. People are back.
All right, any other discussion? All
I motion to approve. I'll go for it.
right. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Fran, please call the roll.
Councilmember Christensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Seelock,
No.
Councilmember Chambers,
Yes.
Councilmember Krueger,
Yes.
Councilmember Park,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Owen,
Yes.
Mayor Moore,
Yes.
motion carried.
All right. Item H, discuss and take action to confirm that dune permit BFDP 22001689 is consistent with the city's coastal management plan. The applicant proposed dune permit will allow for the development of the village south area of the Palmia Beach subdivision. Applicant is KM Beach LLC, property location 3900 block of Highway 361.
Do you have any more of those, Rick?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh,
I
I'm
took
sorry.
yours.
Okay. Thanks. I didn't see it.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. And since one of the comments was tied to this agenda item, let me just reference we did identify, we got a report that there was a piece of equipment on the dunes. We responded pretty quickly. In fact, in NCIS fashion, I actually traveled out there in very stealth-like fashion with my camera, took pictures of about half a dozen sky lifts until I tracked down the one in the picture that we were given.
There were more than one?
There was about 6 out there,
Really?
but I found it. And actually the ironic,
Six in the dunes or?
no, 6 sky tracks in the subdivision.
In the, okay.
I'm sorry. And yeah, more clear. More clear. But ironically, it actually was coming from a sunflower home that was under construction. So it was actually there. We did make contact with the builder. He has responded. We did assess the site. We're determining what additional action. There was no impact, a little compression, but not any damage. But they were taking a shortcut around to the rear of a sunflower property.
I think they're gonna just make a footpath so they don't have to put a boardwalk up.
They're contemplating a Moby map. That's not true. But I did want you to know that we were able to get on that pretty quickly. And we're determining the outcome of the builder may actually receive a fine, which is consistent with our plan, and GLO's been will be made aware as well. So actually they already are aware. So we're working that issue. To this dune permit, what you have there was again as a result of some GLO comments initially and responses that didn't make the package. And some revisions based on the original comment, and that's what you have identified here. Some differences in computation and some of the volumetric computations of the first dune permit that GLO looked at, and some back and forth with the engineers and some reevaluation of the quantity of impact, the volume differences where the TOA dunes were based on some contours and some various surveying topographic related discussions back and forth between GLO and the applicant and the project engineers here too, to probably identify in a more articulate technical fashion than I just did. But nonetheless, in the end, the project itself is pretty self-explanatory, and the exhibits I think speak towards what's going on. It's a phase of the Palmilla subdivision. This is part of the area that has been recaptured and will be again being prepared for new developments. It's not unusual that we see a large area like this that encompasses quite a few that will encompass quite a few lots. So it's usually done at one time. The amount of mitigation I think is referenced in one area as being 3,000. Around 3,000 cubic yards. I just want to point out, because of what I previously mentioned as far as some computational differences, that amount really is closer to 12,000. And like I said, it is a fairly large project when you look at the documents. And the GLO was very, very well aware of, since they were involved in the discussions related to the computation of that amount. And in the end, the approval letter that actually somebody had already mentioned, stole some of my thunder, but one of the speakers did mention correctly that the GLO had in fact approved this. There was a couple of items on the approval that I actually just received earlier this morning that we went back to GLO to clarify, because it was inconsistent with the approval letters we'd had in the past. And in the end, it was in fact a misstatement on their part. They corrected it in the approval letter you have. I believe it's in this package. I apologize. Was the one that they corrected based on some comments that we had put forth to them. It is pretty straightforward with the language that is consistent with what they say. Don't know. Like I said, with that, this obviously did pass through planning and zoning with their approval. We do find it is consistent with our coastal management plan. So I will stop there with staff's recommendation for approval in case you have any questions.
So they're not planning a boardwalk at all in this thing?
Is not proposing this dune.
It just
This
comes
dune permit
later.
Just covers the subdivision.
Okay. And and this is just me reading the application when they do it. So they're stating the activity will not disturb unique flora or fauna. So they're gonna come in and scrape all the vegetation so they can build, or they've already said they will not disturb unique flora or fauna on our application, and then how do we enforce that they don't touch any flora or fauna?
All right, so the dune permit itself, the application does indicate where they will disturb and where they will
Okay.
where they will permanently impact, hence the mitigation, and then where they will temporarily impact. With a narrative on the temporary impact that the material that's removed will be stockpiled and then replaced on that impacted area, actually in greater fashion, much as the mitigation itself, in greater fashion than what's impacted. That pretty much straightforward. So with that, they're limiting where those activities will occur. And so in a large scale project like this, we'll ask that they actually stake off, even cheating to the positive side, if you will, of where that critical dune line is, that they say will not be impacted. So the contractors, once they get out there in their equipment, they have a pretty good idea where to stay away from. So that area is what can't be impacted. Nothing beyond what's submitted in the application and identified can be impacted, hence the statement that you just mentioned.
Okay.
Any other discussion or questions for Rick or the engineer?
Nope.
What? I mean, typically we don't allow questions from the gallery. What, you just have a comment or?
I signed up to speak during this section,
Okay,
but I came up with general.
okay.
So I guess my question is that
You can come up to the front again.
Sabina has 165 acres to work with here. And the landward side of it is mostly where they're putting their drainage and cutting into the critical dunes to put the housing towards the seaward side of the 1,000-foot protection, dune protection line. So they're cutting into the critical dunes to put those houses in there. But there's plenty of space. If they would have just come up with a better plan, you can have the same number of houses, just a different arrangement without affecting the dunes at all. And that is my point. It was just a well not thought out plan. So I don't know that they want to go back and reconfigure their project, but in order to save the dunes, it would be an easy solution to go just take a look at replotting some of those homes back behind the 1,000-foot dune protection line.
Well, our discussion item is not the PUD, so that's not for us to make that decision tonight. It's the dune permit. So,
Right, and that's, well, it is a dune permit.
but it's not asking them to redesign their PUD.
No, I'm not,
So,
I'm saying that's a solution. But you have the authority to give them the permit. And I just think it's short-sighted. Very short-sighted. So.
thank you.
And again, just to, I always feel compelled to address when somebody mentions impact, just to be mindful of the fact that whatever the impact is, they are required to provide equal or greater compensation. And philosophically, we could debate as to whether the two engineers are in a better position than Mother Nature sometimes to determine where that compensation goes. There's a good argument to be made that when you have the opportunity to look at all the topography and actually analyze where you want to place it and not rely on time and Mother Nature, it could be more beneficial. That's certainly, I think, part of what GLO looks at. So again, for any impact, again, just both on the vegetation side and or on the volumetric impact of the critical dunes, there has to be an equal or greater amount of compensation that the project engineer, our reviewing engineer for the city and the GLO has to agree is equal to or better than what was there before.
Okay, Any other discussion, questions, comments? Right, we have a motion.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay,
I'll second.
all right, thanks you. Any further discussion? Brand, please call the roll.
Councilmember Park,
No.
Councilmember Krueger,
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers,
Yes.
Councilmember Seelock,
Yes.
Councilmember Christensen,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Owen,
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Okay.
All right. Item I, presentation and general discussion from Broadus and Associates on Hurricane Harvey recovery.
Good afternoon, everyone. A couple updates since the last time we talked. We have made some good progress, especially on the appeals. It's the holiday season, so FEMA sat on them all year and we're coming on Thanksgiving, so we get all of the denials with 60-day timelines. So public safety's in. We coordinated with the attorney actually this afternoon on the final touches of getting the code compliance and all the wrap up that will go in. It's due November 27th. Final cut, it should be reviewed for us Friday. So that's on target to go in with the square footage from what was the part of the original appeal. The bulkhead denial came in last week on the fill behind the bulkhead. We were anticipating that is going into the appeal phase. What did allow itself to happen because of that is we met with the GLO in coordination on the revetment and the blowouts that they still have. And why this is important, they denied the fill because the blowout, we didn't take preventative measures. Just insane.
This is the blowout here. This is where the water, after it came into town, you know, it comes into town this way, he hits the high ground and then it rolls back out. Rolled around that high, and then it blew out right through there. So that's the blowout. So what we're trying to do is get FEMA to come in here and fill this to where it was pre-storm, which kind of looked like that.
Yep. And it's important, it's amazing on the environmental, historic and preservation side of protection. We can't even sneeze out there, but when the land is lost for the habitat, it's okay. Point of that is the revetment has to be addressed. It is also being raised. There was a long-term plan in coordination with this operation for them to come with the rock across the back of the bulkhead. That's more than likely going to be challenging based on the fill missing now. So we're working with them to put in maybe a construction corridor while that appeal happens. But until the revetment project is done, it would be hard for us to put fill back in.
Yeah.
So I bring that up just to know the sequence of events that we've been talking with FEMA since 2018. And then we have not received the fire station yet, but it will come during the holidays, I can assure you. And we are prepared to appeal that. So that's the projects that have been in those long process. I remind you, as we go into this season, this is when we get busy. Other than that, the projects are progressing. The piers are right on target. The gas system, we have been working very closely with the contractor as well as the water district for coordination, point repairs, any breaks or disruptions. And so we put a process in place. I think that's helping us to get in front of that, but the gas system's progressing. One of the proposed things that FEMA has accepted, if we can make work with the construction corridor, is to take the last part of the nature preserve and do a least cost alternative to bring sidewalk across the land that we have restored behind the bulkhead. So we did a proposal with Jim Urban. I know Colleen and Ray did have a chance to look at it, but instead of the crushed granite where the water is, putting a sidewalk, concrete sidewalk, and FEMA has accepted that as a least cost alternative. So we're in the phases of coordination now with that. Other than that, everything moving forward. Cash flow, we approved the gas $500,000 drop. So that's pretty much our projects.
Okay.
All right. Y'all have a very happy Thanksgiving.
You too.
See y'all
Thank
soon.
you.
All right. Next is item J, resolution adopting a board, commission, and committee handbook and providing it for and of said effective date.
Fran. Your handbook.
I started on the handbook a while back, but I added the additional that Mayor had requested me to add.
Thank you.
And if y'all have any questions, let me know. I did work on it with Lawrence. Lawrence and I worked on it together, so if there's any questions, let me know.
Lawrence, did you bring your handbook ideas from your previous municipality?
Yeah, we discussed a couple of things.
Good.
I haven't looked at it.
So you just added in the boards, commissions and committees, is that it?
We added in the some additional, consequences that, how to, present yourself when you're in public, that you are, representing the city when you're out in the public, and to stay professional.
And the Old Town Board was not in there.
No.
I did not add the, okay,
Yeah.
so we can update that with
Yeah.
the Old Town Board, but it's pretty much for boards and commissions across all city boards and commissions.
Yeah, so you've been working on the handbook for a while.
Yes.
And then you just went and added some different comments on it based on kind of what I was talking about from the last meeting. But I think it's important to have a handbook for all of our committees and appointed boards and elected officials and everybody. So this is.
Yeah, it's good to have all the rules just condensed
Sure.
in one book, and because right now they're in the charter, they're in chapter 2. They're kind of hodgepodge all over the place. It'd be nice to just have them condensed where you can just pull out a little manual and.
And I know when people get appointed to boards, they get a lovely letter that says welcome, but depending on the board that they're on, they may not have any rules and kind of guidelines and governing,
That's right.
bodies. So that's good. Yeah, it gives them
Lets
something.
Know what a forum
Mhm.
is, and just basic information.
Yeah, I think
We
it's good.
did, have a question earlier about, the legality of all this. Whenever these handbooks exist, it's really up to the council how it interprets and enforces these rules. So this is, strictly something that the boards will use and operate off of.
So how would an infraction on one of these boards? I mean, who would be the arbiter, I guess, first, Lawrence? And, who would be the arbiter of, let's say, one of the,
So like, let's say, for example, someone broke a standard of conduct.
there you
had an
go.
issue with it.
Good. And so how would that, walk me through how that would progress?
So
I'm not against this, by the way. I think that
Right.
everybody should be more civil in, in public life and in private life, but I'm just wondering how we're going to actually enforce or walk through this for me.
Right. It should be, someone makes a complaint. So you would.
Well, that's a part, who's someone, so.
So basically, this is board member interpreted and enforced and operated only. So basically, the complaint would come from a board member on another board member is the way it would work.
Okay.
For breaking one of the standards of conduct listed in here, right? And that's why we have to be familiar with it. And I think there might be a sign off section in the back that this was observed and read, right? We can have that. Yeah. So then that way, basically, if there is an issue, and obviously, you probably should talk with one another and handle that offline. But if it did get to the point where you feel like this was the means to justify, what needs to be done, you would cite what standard of conduct was broken. And that complaint would be taken in-house, and then it would be put on the agenda for
a city council meeting.
Right, for discussion, and then it would proceed from there. Whether the board wanted to,
So is there like a majority that has to vote on the board that says, hey, yeah, we agree that this wasn't
Yeah,
misconduct?
there would be a discussion. I think, obviously this would be advisable it would probably be an executive session item because we would have to ask that
And it's
person, are you
personnel.
open?
Yeah.
Are you okay for discussion in open session or executive session? It would go that route and then come back out for action if there were so chosen to proceed. Or it could be no action.
Roxanne, have you had a chance to look at this? No, it was not assigned by the council for me to review.
Oh, gotcha.
I'm just trying to actually understand, the whole handbook is brand new, not just the red line sections?
The whole handbook is brand new. Yeah.
Okay.
What's in red?
The section in red is what we discussed at the last city council meeting. To add into the book.
And so, Mr. Catron, I hear what you're saying. But I'm like looking for that procedure in the manual and I don't see that procedure.
An actual procedure for taking in a complaint,
Right.
right?
I don't know if I'm missing it or,
Right. I don't think it was added in, it's like,
so there's not a procedure then.
Code of ordinance states that the city council may remove any member for any reason that they choose.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, Francisco.
We
You're
can
correct.
add that to the handbook if that's something that you'd like to do.
The city council.
Yes.
in black and
Yes, exactly. I think it's in the handbook, if I read that, to make that person aware that they could be removed.
We can make a reference to our city ordinance, maybe to.
Yeah,
You can put in the other
I'm
advisory
sorry.
board in.
So it does state right here, removal of members.
Yeah, it's in the handbook. It says you can't.
Removal of members in red. on
Well, no, I think she's saying, what's the exact process? Like this, is there a?
Process.
You were talking about a board member reporting another board member and then the board meeting and deciding to discuss it.
The whole process of fielding a complaint and then processing a complaint. Right.
He was just answering his question about how the process would go.
And it would
No,
have
I
to be a
agree.
board member.
Right. And that's important. I just don't see that procedure in the handbook.
I mean, the way I look at it, I mean, you would think anyone could bring forth a complaint.
Right.
Anyone
Now,
or anyone on the board?
I would think.
I would think any
Just be nice
city,
for
any
it.
staffer, anyone on the board, a council member.
A lot of these boards have city staffers and council members that are on the board in some capacity, so.
Or any citizen. It includes citizens too, in F. So it's everybody. Right? Yep,
Where does it say citizen?
F, right in the middle. You can't do anything to the mayor, the council, other
Oh.
town staff, or any citizen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But they didn't say, okay, I missed that.
I guess what I could say is,
No, it's a complaint. I mean, if normally in handbooks, if there's a complaint, there's a complaint and you have to investigate
Oh, I get it.
Right.
Yeah, I
the
get it.
complaint to see if there's any
I just went
Um,
back through the.
basis or validity to
Yes.
it, and then corrective action.
I guess, like the language now is pretty broad, but I mean, we could narrow it down to the exact, ABC process. But, currently, I guess, any council person could put anything on the agenda, correct? So knowing that, we have the standard of conduct here. So following those lines, if someone felt like there was a breaking of that standard of conduct, you just request that to hear the broken or the misconduct or the not adherence to a section in here and just kind of review it from there. But it does state right here, removal of members that, board may remove, any person with the vote of 4. So it's kind of a broad way, right?
I'm just saying,
I think it's best the way, I think it's best to not write it on what the actual step-by-step is. I mean, it's just best if it's to the level of an infraction that is bad, it's gonna get to one of you guys and you guys can put it on the agenda instead of it saying it must go brought to the city manager's attention and I get to ultimately weigh in and say, oh, I'm sorry, this does not rise to the level of a violation.
No, that's
For
fine.
me to report it
So
to
what
council.
you're saying though is,
Yeah.
it would be brought to a council member and the council member can put it on an agenda. And if that's the process, that's fine. I just think that does need to be
Yeah.
defined.
Well,
That's okay with
it's the process by default, because like Lawrence said, you guys can put anything you want on the agenda. So if there's an infraction by a board member, any one of you, no matter what procedure is written down, you could go right over that procedure's head and say, I want that person
They don't even have to have an infraction.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's almost irrelevant to have the procedure because.
Done right now,
I
though,
just
right?
wanna make
There's
Exactly,
that-
The
exactly.
same can be done at this very moment.
At this very moment, without even mentioning standard of conduct.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't even have to. I've always believed in when you're writing policies and stuff, less is more. Usually you don't even put the procedure in there because the procedure is simple. It goes to council and council gets to decide on how they want to deal with it. So I think less is more. And if someone rises to the level to where a council member thinks that.
So by approving this resolution, all we would be doing then is simply reinforcing what already exists. Is that a correct statement?
Yeah,
You're adopting,
that's correct.
the resolution is
Yeah.
adopting the handbook.
And
we
the
don't-
Yeah.
handbook
We don't have a handbook.
We don't have a handbook.
already done, well, all these, I've just heard, these are already in the city charter and other ordinances, right? We could already do this today, is what I heard.
This is, I think,
more
more of a
guideline
guideline.
Charter.
This is kind of two parts. There's one of it is just a compilation of all the boards so that we have something to hand. The main function of this is to be able to hand this to board members and they see all the dates, they see all the different boards, they see how their board should work. And they get to read that one little, they get to read that half page that says, behave yourself, act civil.
That's fine.
Or it's gonna rise to the level of getting the council and you're gonna be removed. So it's just kind of a, the policy has, it's kind of twofold. It's what's expected out of you and that one page of standard of conduct.
Can you explain G to me? Please, just, sorry. I was
A
trying
board,
to-
a board or commission member shall not meet or confer by phone, in person, mail, et cetera, with any applicant or representative of an applicant, including but not limited to engineers, architects, attorneys, or other outside the presence of city staff.
So if something's coming before a board and the board members see the topic, any of those board members can never talk to the applicant, an engineer, their attorney or anything, or other outside the president, or does they have to be with city staff in order to talk to somebody? Somebody's making an application and you want some background on it. You're not allowed, if you're on the board, to ask them what's the background on that, or what were you trying to accomplish? Because on.
Yeah, that one I'm not.
I just was trying to figure out,
That's what I mean. It needs to be. looked at
or,
first.
or other outside the presence of city staff. So do you have to have a city staff present to be able to talk with an applicant coming before the board? Or talk to their engineer if you have a question on the application? Or does everything have to be done? Nobody talks to anybody until a meeting's called to order. That's just what I was, I mean, it's written there for a reason. I couldn't glean
So usually.
I mean,
the
here's
instance of it.
here's and I'd have to look into that one a little bit more. But here's what, let's say a board member on P and Z is reviewing a dune permit.
Right.
And they call the submitting applicant. Or let's say they call the submitting architect or the submitting engineer.
Right.
That engineer's not gonna talk
Okay.
to some board member.
Okay.
Most likely they're gonna say, I'm sorry, that's been submitted to the city. You can go look at it, but I'm hired by Mr. Smith and I'm not here to discuss it with you. I mean,
So that makes sense.
I mean, you can call around if you want, but most professionals aren't gonna give you they really technically probably should not be I mean, they have a client. I mean, so
But
maybe that's kind of what that boils around, but you know, I don't. I just don't think, I know if someone called the city's architect and started asking a whole bunch of questions about the police station, they're gonna say, I'm sorry, but you can call Mr. Parsons and ask him. So I mean, they're most likely gonna shoo you away. If that has anything to do with it, I don't
Well, I'm
know.
just
I
saying,
need
if
to
a
look at
board
that.
member talks to an applicant because something's
Well,
coming up.
I think it's additional, I'm sorry, sir,
Okay.
for, isn't meet and confer more of a legal term, that's Catronio? Meet and confer, typically, that, I hear that usually whenever, you're negotiating. Right, I think this is more along the lines of don't negotiate on your own outside of a board meeting.
Dale, no making any deals.
I'm just trying to figure out
It just says you shall
if
not.
somebody
meet them,
wanted
so-
something.
Well, I think let's just do this with this. I mean, let's definitely have Roxanne review this, and that's something that she can
I
look
think
into,
that's a
G.
good-
Yeah.
Good idea.
Because not meeting with an applicant.
Let me give you an example, if I may.
Mhm.
So Mr. Parsons gave a very good example of like a P and Z board member. But you have to remember, some of your board members serve in quasi judicial roles where they're like judges, right? And so it's important for them to be able to be neutral and hear both sides in making a decision, right?
Mhm.
So I can understand you would not want a board member in a quasi judicial role to interact with engineers or architects or attorneys. But this is being applicable to all boards,
Mhm.
and some of your boards are advisory in nature and not quasi judicial. So if I was just to take that sentence and just read it the way you read it, I think a board member, an advisory board member, might say, gosh, as a board member, I can't even talk to an architect or an engineer or attorney about a park that I'm interested in on the agenda as an advisory board member. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I think the intent just didn't get conveyed in the actual language of what they were trying to do. So I think it's quasi judicial board members versus advisory board members. Right? Does that make sense to you?
Yep.
Did
I
we-
understand P and Z, the library board, when they're going to hire a librarian, it'd be nice if a board member would be able to talk to the applicant in the position of the board, as opposed to.
So I
That's
think
just
the
what I mean.
language is it's just not applicable to all the boards.
To all boards.
Right, it can be
Okay.
read generally differently depending on which board you're in. I just think we just need to work on the language if that's the consensus of the council. To prohibit like a quasi judicial board member from talking to an applicant. I think you could also read it in another way, and I'll stop after this. I'm an attorney and I'm not a city staff member, I'm a city official, so I'm like, well, does that mean that if one of the board members has a concern, can they speak to the city attorney about it? And in that sense, I would say no. And typically, nothing comes to me unless, of course, the city manager or the city council instruct me to do it.
Right.
But I've listened, I'll stop there.
Okay.
I just did a real quick search. It comes to mind, you know, for legal matters, what meet and confer, because you hear about it in civil service. It's usually kind of meeting with the outside third party entities to come to a negotiation or a deal and matters with civil service. But one of these legal definitions says meet and confer is to try to resolve a matter, or at least determine the points of conflict. So I guess this could be along the lines of don't try to negotiate or resolve matters, you know, outside of meetings. In a way.
That makes sense.
And I think that language would be more appropriate
Yeah.
than the use of meeting and better.
Right.
So we just need to work on language.
I think we should just let Roxanne have a stab at this and give it a review and
Okay.
bring it back. I mean, we're not in
No,
any
I think that's
super
fine.
big rush.
Move on.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, so we'll table that approval until next meeting. Right, item K, award request for qualifications RFQ 2022-02 for consulting services for Charlie's Pasture sediment management and restoration plan to Stantec.
Hello,
Hello, Ray.
It's wonderful. The map is in the right spot.
Yes, that's right. I was queued up and ready.
Michael kind of gave a good intro to the project, so, but this, was approved in the budget for engineering services to help planning for this, area where we lost all that land. So when we get material, whether it's, through FEMA or other sources of, dredge material or fill material, we'll have a plan in place to, what elevations and where we want to have all these different habitats that we lost. So we had 3 really great applications from engineering firms. We had me and Colleen and 2 of my advisory boards members review them and score them. And then Colleen and I called a couple references, and David reviewed them was kind of like the final reviewer. And so anyway, we decided to go with Stantec. They have a really deep, wide range of staff members with tons of experience, as did the other firms, but they ultimately were the ones that kind of got the highest scores and good references and all that.
So the scientists and the nature reserve people, when they look at something like this, they go, Dave, you don't just back up 1,000 dump trucks and dump sand in a hole. There's a scientific approach of how you should use it. Maybe you do this or that with it. So that's what this is. This is the scientific community having a stab at how they think we should deal with this, instead of just dumping 1,000 loads of dump trucks.
And if we got that material tomorrow, I guess we could dump it in there and we could do the sculpting later and,
Right.
get the elevations right for the habitats that we want to restore there. But we're gonna also involve stakeholder meetings, so the community can come and give their input, because I have heard from a lot of people, they have input for this area, so. So that'll be the kind of some meetings along the way with community and natural resource manager involvement, so.
Okay.
So we included the Stantec's application in there, and there was score sheets and all that.
Very good.
Any questions?
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to
Okay.
award the RFP to Stantec.
I'll second it.
All right, there's a first and a second. Any further discussion? Fran, please call the roll.
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers,
Yes.
Councilmember Seelow,
Yes.
Councilmember Christensen,
Yes.
Councilmember Park,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Owen,
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes. Item L, resolution authorizing the purchase of one 2023 Chevrolet 1500 4x4 regular cab truck from Caldwell County Chevrolet for a total cost of $54,965 through Buy Board Purchasing Cooperative, funding from fiscal year end 2022-23 budget, capital outlay account 225 Recreational Development Fund, capital outlay account 58301, and authorizing city manager to sign all documents that say said purchase.
Colleen left, so Darla's filling in.
I guess, so
Ultimately, Darla has to.
No truck for Parks and Rec.
no truck for Parks and Rec. I will say that this did come in at 54,965. There is only 45,000 in the RDC budget for this. But there are other things in the budget as we progress through the year that we may have some left over. If we don't at the end of the year, we would be asking for a budget amendment for the excess if needed.
But we won't have to.
No, we shouldn't. Trucks are much more expensive than they were even in the summer when we were doing the budget.
All right.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All right, first and a second. Any further discussion? Fran, please call the roll.
Mayor Pro Tem Owen,
Yes.
Councilmember Park,
Yes.
Councilmember Kirker,
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers,
Yes.
Councilmember Seelow,
Yes.
Councilmember Christensen,
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes. Item M, resolution authorizing the purchase of a 2023 Chevrolet Tahoe for the EMS department from Caldwell County Chevrolet through Buy Board Purchasing Cooperative in the total amount of $80,261. Funding from fiscal year end 2022-23 budget, capital outlay account 050 general fund, capital outlay account number 61340, and authorizing city manager to sign all documents associated with said purchase. You're more expensive.
Yeah, what happened there?
What happened?
Other related options.
Yeah, it's, you know,
Yeah.
mine has lights and different stuff and radios and all kinds of equipment.
That's just the Tahoe. We haven't got to the EMS.
Yeah, but that's a Tahoe with everything on it. That's fully equipped. And so that's the outfitter. So that's a turnkey package.
Oh,
deal.
okay.
Everything extra that you need.
Mhm. Sometimes we buy the vehicles. I think the PD buys a lot of them where they buy them separately and they send them to an outfitter for another 30,000. And this is
This
just
is
a
all
package
together.
deal where they do it all up there.
What's the design we're gonna put on this?
It'll match the.
Gothic?
Yeah.
No. Match the
It'll match the blue ambulance, yeah, and that's included. So I mean, that's with the.
All right, good. So it's a good
blue paint and
match.
everything else.
All right, good.
Purple
So
LSU.
it'll-
Yeah, he's thinking about it.
So yeah, it should have everything, turnkey package deal. I went up there 2 weeks ago to go check them all out. They currently have one in stock in the whole floor. If not, it's about a 6-month wait to even find them.
So act quickly.
Yes. All right, we'll do this.
And wisely.
Well, don't go anywhere. All right.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Brandon, please call the roll.
Yes.
Councilmember Seelock.
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers.
Yes.
Councilmember Krueger.
Yes.
Councilmember Plutt.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Owens.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item N, resolution authorizing the purchase of 2023 F-450 Type 1 ambulance for the EMS department from Siddons Martin Emergency Group LLC through HGAC for a total amount of $340,391 to replace Unit 419, declaring Unit 419 as surplus and authorizing the city manager to act as the executive officer and authorized representative of the city in all matters pertaining to said purchase.
So this ambulance is the same ambulance that we just purchased. I think it was December of last December. Yeah, and it was pretty much the same specs, but a lot more expensive. Everything has gone up dramatically. The reason why we're trying to get this on there now is because we're looking at, originally they said 24 to 30 months, now they're saying 32 to 36 months. So we get it, and so this will replace 419 whenever it comes in, but 419 is still in great shape.
Yeah, buy it now while it's this price. It's gonna be more in 2 years.
The timeline is killing us.
So the others are a purchase. This is a lease purchase?
It's how it's worded, I think, right?
Still a purchase.
Yeah, that's what I thought. So it's a capital lease purchase, but okay,
You just use pay it out over time,
okay.
but it's not gonna be here for a long time.
No.
Then I motion to approve and get it going fast.
I'll second.
All right, there's a motion a second. Any further discussion? Brandon, please call the roll.
Councilmember Hart.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Owens.
Yes.
Councilmember Krueger.
Yes.
Councilmember Chambers.
Yes.
Councilmember Seelock.
Yes.
Councilmember Christensen.
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Item O, resolution entering into a contract agreement with Delacy Communications for legislative consultant during the 88th Texas Legislature. Funding from the general account 050 mayor and council account 52215 lobbying, setting terms, conditions, fees for the effective date and authorizing city manager to sign all documents associated with said contract agreement.
Okay, we looked around for about the last 5 months, probably for consultants, for lobbyists for the upcoming legislative cycle. This one was at the top of a lot of people's list, and we reached out to her. She does have the availability to help us out. So I think she's going to be a good fit.
So this is only.
This is
for that
6
period?
months,
That's
6
it.
months. So it's December 1 through into June.
Do you think that's time enough to get anything really done? I mean.
Well, that's the legislative cycle. That's it.
But do you keep going with these lobbyists and keep them engaged, or you really hire them only for the legislative session and then?
You can do,
Just seems to me like the communication would go on even when the legislation says.
it really, it depends if you're on a defensive schedule or offensive schedule. But typically your legislative lift is over in May.
Mhm.
You know, anything you were attempting or playing defense on, it either gets approved or gets killed. Now, if they extend the legislative session and like they did 2 years ago, we did extend it through the summer because they kept,
Okay.
doing it. But pretty much everything's over by June 30th.
We do have 80 budgeted.
Yeah.
And what do you have in your top priorities on this? Or
It's
where-
really what you guys direct me.
So that's,
Yeah. You know, I'm gonna bring back another discussion item for December
okay.
in 3 weeks, so. You guys should get me your list so we can start working with her and see what's doable, what's not doable.
Last one too. I mean, there were
Yeah.
items that we discussed, so. Kind of give us a heads up. on
Yeah,
what might
yeah.
help them. Okay,
I'm looking to approve. I'll second.
right. There's a motion a second. Any further discussion? Fran, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Yes. All right, item P, ordinance, first reading and amending the Code of Ordinance, Chapter 22, taxation, Article 5, hotel motel occupancy tax, and by amending Section 22-73 hotel motel tax advisory committee membership terms, providing for severance reading and effective date.
Let me do a quick lead in here and then Lawrence can show you what we looked at. So this is the all the different 501c3s coming to you guys for hot tax funds. You guys said, hey, Dave, go develop a program. And so that they come to a individual board instead of just coming to council everything. So we took that a couple months ago. We started reviewing it. And then about a month ago, Lawrence said, when Lawrence got here, he said, hey, Dave, you guys already have a board. I said, what? He goes, yeah, it's in chapter 22. You guys already have a hotel tax review board. So Darla and I were like, no, we're pretty sure we don't. We've never heard of one in the 20 years we've been here. So sure enough, it was there. And we started going back and looking at minutes. And in the 80s, that board was meeting like once a month. It was in every we looked at all the minutes. They weren't doing a whole lot, but they were reviewing events and they were very active. And then around 94, there's a resolution that they only meet quarterly. And then around 2000, we don't know why, but city manager, council, they just stopped meeting altogether. So the board exists. And then the more we started researching it, a lot of the, Galveston, South Padre, they have the same board. And the process is all very similar. The Texas Hotel Lodging Association works with a lot of entities that have hot tax. They have a lot of proposed forms. The method that most people use is you have a board that reviews applicant or events, and people get to bring in a proposed event. It gets reviewed, it gets pre-approved. Then you go conduct your event over the next 10 months or whenever your event is. Then you fill out a after action form, and that's really where the rubber meets the road. And that's where that event is proving up their heads in beds. And then it goes back to the board because it's a reimbursement process, and the board makes the final determination on did they meet what they were gonna
So they
say.
don't get reimbursed until they.
Right. So let's say you have 4 projects and you bring them to our proposal is that you would bring them to the board in April. And enough to get ready for council to bless some type of budget, some number. And then let's say the events take place in August, October, November, January, February, throughout the year. And then the board meets quarterly. And so as the events take place, that 501c3 has to do a follow-up event action form. They bring it to the board who's meeting quarterly, and the board reviews it and says, all right, you have all these sign-offs by hoteliers that said you did this, whatnot, you put this many people in bed, and we believe you're entitled to a full refund of your proposed event, which was, $5,800. And you go from there. But that's what most cities have in place. Is that exact process where you're submitting your events. You're getting a pre-approval, you go host your event, and then you follow up with your action item and seek reimbursement.
Yeah, so. I'll jump in. Thank you for that.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, that was excellent. That's correct. We're still, so I did build a draft policy, but I don't have that for tonight. We will bring that forward, and then it's pretty much as he described. It's a good description of what the policy will look like. Do we want to do reimbursements or hold back 25%, upon you giving us a post-event report? All those different things we'll bring back for y'all sometime in the future.
So will this supplant any of the just grants that we've given historically or?
Yeah, this will be the new method. So in other words, it's not coming to you every goal session and every meeting that we have through the summer. This is supposed to and I told the mayor this, I said, ultimately, Mayor, if someone's not happy with what they get from the board, guess where they're coming?
Yeah.
They're gonna come back to you guys. We didn't get enough money from the board. They're so is there any foolproof thing that alleviates it from always coming back to you guys? I don't know. We're just gonna have to.
So
Go ahead.
So do I have some, on section B, I have some issues with B. I think there needs to be a council member on there.
I
don't
agree.
think it should be weighted as heavy towards because right now, basically the 3 members of the chamber can basically throw this whole thing. Yeah, I think it needs to be weighted differently, so I think we need to.
At least one.
So at least one council
Yeah.
member, and I think we need to reduce the chamber down to, 1 or 2. And it just, and I think council should have the ultimate authority to choose, just like any other board,
What we did find that is in most cities, because you're answering to Texas Hotel Lodging, you do have some hotel beef on the board.
They're not there.
Yeah.
I'm saying we need to, I think there needs to be.
What I would like to suggest is, and this would be, explain a little bit better in a policy, because tonight is really just the bylaws or how the board governs itself. And then once the board's reestablished, the policy will then come next, but we're going to take it through the hot board, get their blessing, and then to you guys. And I say that to say exactly what you're saying. Every application will start with the hot board, right? Whoever these people are. After they give their recommendations, it then goes to council. So you guys have the ultimate.
I know it's on the ultimate, I'm saying I just want the board to be a little more.
Diverse.
Diverse.
So you're thinking like maybe 2 chamber, 1 council, 2 city? I didn't want to make it too big because it's just so problematic to fill boards.
Hotel or.
That'd be for the chamber.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Okay, but I don't understand what you mean. They're not appointing chamber board members to the board. What this outlines is basically saying that the city manager picks 2. The
Mhm.
chamber
Chamber picks-
tourism board picks 3, of which 2 people have to be
Lodging it, yeah.
entities. And then there's an alternate. So I would rather Dave picks them or Brett picks them. It's still open game for anybody. I mean, Dave could pick 2 people that Brett really wanted to pick. So are you're concerned that you're concerned that about Brett picking more than Dave picks?
No, but
Okay, and I don't disagree with
Yeah.
the council member on there, but you made a
So
comment. You
that's
said
2 and 2 and
it's-
then
it's
1.
letting the chamber people pick too many, but we're picking from the same pool. It's not like the chambers, right? I mean, you each can pick anybody from the community, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
David, why not add one council?
what's that?
Why not
Um,
just add one council to your?
And make.
Yeah, because right now it's 3 from the 3 chamber picks, 2 city picks. But you guys are, I didn't,
Alternates.
oh yeah, 1 alternate, yeah, 1 alternate, 1
I mean,
alternate.
but you've got to have an odd number
You do.
for tiebreaking. So you're gonna have to either pick 2 more. Well, I mean. It's recommended. They don't get a vote.
Yeah, but you might not have you might
Maybe we
not,
just leave it like we're doing it through council.
I mean, if there's a board in place, then I'm in favor of bringing that board out of guidance, whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever the right word is, and if we need to tweak the terms and the membership and how they.
Well, that's what this is doing.
That's fine. I
Yeah,
think that's.
this is 7 members, 7 and 4. We just think this board is so huge that, I mean, we have problems filling P and Z Board of Adjustment. Now this is an 11 board, this is an 11 member board.
Right. All I'm asking is that I think there should be a member of council.
Yeah.
That's all I'm asking.
Yeah.
Well, you can change the wording to say maybe an alternate for member.
Yeah, maybe the chamber's 3 is the alternate so that you still have 5. So it's 2 city, 2 chamber, council, and the chamber can provide the alternate. Then you have a 5-member board.
With support, it's done.
Did we have somebody signed up to speak on this?
We do.
Also, when it talks about just the tax code. 2-step is 1. The slang is heads and beds, and then there's the 9 other categories.
Right.
That should be part of it, so we're not just saying
Yes,
how many people come in.
definitely. It'll be in the policy.
Okay.
And I do have that.
It's in item A of the ordinance.
Okay.
This is a bylaw. It's an ordinance.
Why did they quit doing it?
Right.
I could not find that. I looked. and
I
looked
mean,
and
there's a
looked.
reason for it.
Well, I have a question about the way that, so
Well, they stopped doing it and they stopped giving out money.
No one started giving out the money until 2 years ago. No one was getting money.
Well, they were getting little. They were getting,
some.
there was like, we found in the 80s, little tranches, like 1,500.
And really, the money that they were getting before, even in recent dates, was coming through the chamber.
It was coming through the
was
chamber.
Giving individual organizations money, but the city council making it a budgetary item did not start until recently.
No. It was in the 80s.
Well,
It was
in.
very little pieces.
But yeah.
And was. So when Ann Vaughn was here, the chamber was funding the art center. And when she left.
And Sandfest.
And Sandfest and different things. Well, Sandfest
And
doesn't
theater.
come to us. But when she left, they kind of quit doing that. And that's when the art center approached the council, because we were giving the art center 2,500 a year. Since I've been here, I think it was
Yeah.
2,500. We were giving him, maybe 500 a quarter or something. But, the asks have gone up astronomically in the last 3 years. So, but I do know the chamber did kind of cut off funding for the art center and stuff, and some of that happened when COVID happened, right? And then they came here. So.
I'm not opposed to the ask. I think the ask is fine, but I think we need a policy. So if there's a board and we can recreate a board to be able to take some of the burden of the review process off of council, I think that is a good appropriate measure.
Yeah, but this tonight is actually an ordinance change.
Right.
Because
Yeah,
it's in
this is
code.
just tweaking the
It's not
ordinance.
bylaws,
Well,
but
bylaws is just how the board governs itself. It's an ordinance.
but this is a bylaws tonight. This is an ordinance, right? Texas, and we did put in there as directed by Texas tax code. So
The main thing that you're doing to this ordinance is deciding who appoints the membership to the board. So I heard a lot of ideas and I'm not quite sure which ones we finalized on. I heard there was one council member.
2 chamber,
Chamber.
and then the chamber also does the alternate, and then 2 city.
And when you
That
say
you-
city, is it the city manager appointing?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's all we're doing today is really just changing this, amending this code.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's also giving a schedule for the board to meet in the spring prior to the summer city council budget meeting.
Well, my question is, so like say the theater, I mean, they don't have big events. They have events all through the year. They put on productions all through the year. So then how would they go about coming and asking for, because they don't have a big event? So,
Well, no, they could, like, for example, let's say they had a play that was
right.
$10,000.
Okay.
And they would come and say, we're gonna put on this play, cost 10 grand. And we think maybe our door fee, maybe we're gonna bring in about 6. So we're gonna be 4 in the hole that we want to use on advertising. And so that would be their application for that one. Let's say they have 10 plays.
Right.
They could do an event application for each play for that whole year calendar. So what you have to do is you have to train people, you have to train these groups to plan their calendar out so that every year they know what their events are. So come April, maybe they have 8 events that they're submitting for that calendar year. So they need to do their work and
Right.
and plan their year out so they know what their events are, what their projected advertising is. And so, yes, you're making them do work. But when we looked around, this is what everyone else is doing. And in talking to
Not saying
Texas
that-
Hotel
yeah.
Lodging, this is what we're supposed to be
Didn't know
doing.
if they were gonna come.
Yeah,
every single-
our willy-nilly way that we did this summer is got a lot of head shakes, like in this direction, not up and down.
There's a lot of language out there. Once we get to, again, we'll put this board together and I have a policy ready. We'll bounce it off the city manager and bring it before the board for their blessing and then to you guys. But there is a lot of language out there, specifically Texas Hotel Lodging Association. And I can go into more to your question, but they kind of agree that the art recipients must satisfy 3 requirements. You want me to go into that?
No.
Yeah.
No, you don't have to go into
Oh, okay.
all of it. Just, I was just. Yeah. Well, and then even like the art center, I mean, they don't have a lot of events. I mean, they have First Fridays, they have a few things. I was just curious how that was gonna look and if they were gonna have to prove that they brought people in from,
Right.
because I know a lot of times people come here and maybe they don't come here, to see the museum or go to the art center or go to a play.
Right.
But while they're here, they do those events, especially if the weather's bad. Just
Yeah, so you have to attract people from outside the area to stay within hotels and our city limits that we benefit from collecting those taxes. That's step 1. And step 2 is one of the 9 eligible categories. So that's the whole point of, when the policy does come, it'll have all that information in there. So if they're comfortable still applying for those monies, the hot board will get the application. And then they'll recommend to the council whether to approve or not at that funding. Maybe y'all don't like it, or you want to approve it in a different kind of way, less funding or whatever. That's ultimately up to you guys. And then that gets put in the budget. We have the post-event form is where they come in later to prove it all up, because you're really not going to know a lot, right? Do they meet the categories? Okay, they meet everything. Let's preliminary approve it, put it in the budget. Until they come with the post-event form and report up that they actually did go and talk with everyone, they did surveys, they found out exactly how many people, or they did block room reserves, right, stuff like that. That they can satisfy the hot board that they really proved up that they did bring heads and beds. Then that report, I think, will also get passed on to you guys. So we know we have a success there and keep it going.
And that's one of the, and that's where you saw some slight changes in the various cities that we looked at. Some of them are super strict. Some of them say, list the hotel lodging blocks. In other words, they want blocks. They're not interested in you showing a list of names of people that said, oh yeah, I'm from out of town. That didn't cut it in a lot of these. They want signed affidavits from hoteliers saying this block of 10 rooms was rented on Friday and Saturday night for the McGregor fishing tournament. And it is hard proof that you are bringing in heads and beds. Now, others were less lenient, and it was a list of, these people signed this list and this is where they're from. And it was, it was less lenient. So you guys are going to have to figure out what level of toughness you guys want to be.
What about taking the money that we give and they donate out? I mean, they get hotel motel packs, but then they have a fundraiser and they're donating out still. I mean, instead of using that money to keep their business running, they're donating like to the school or to whoever.
Well, what we did
Yeah.
see a lot of was a lot of the verbiage that the preamble verbiage in these forms was that hot tax money is for new events and events that are struggling to make their ends meet financially. And a lot of them said, if your event is in the black, you don't qualify. Don't come asking for money if your event already is breaking even, because what's there to ask for? So some of them, when you do your after event, they want to know what you brought in at the door, what was donated, what was your concession, did you have food sales, and then what was your total expenditures, and whatever the difference is, that's what you qualify for. If there's a loss, if you're in the red, that's what your event qualifies for. So a lot of them get down in the weeds that much.
Well, and some of these that have memberships, they will ask in a letter, do you want to donate to the scholarship fund? So I know that I've done that with a couple of these,
That's all.
where you as a participant, add $10 to your membership fee.
In this draft policy, I wrote, questions along those lines, like how much money did you bring in, right? How much, and it's a breakdown of your expenses. I have budgets in here they have to fill out also.
Okay.
So we're gonna probably have language in there saying you're not allowed to donate funds from the city to other organizations. You need to show how you're expensing it. And really any money's left over, you need to get back. So we're gonna try to capture all, it's pretty detailed.
Okay. Okay, again, this agenda item is just to
It's
reestablish the ordinance or change the ordinance establishing a new hot tax advisory committee.
ordinance amendment, yes, ma'am, on the hotel occupancy tax board and how they govern themselves.
Yes, we do. I'm gonna get through the
Oh, sorry.
discussion first
I'm
because
sorry.
they asked to speak after the discussion. Okay, all right. Now that you've heard all the discussion, Leroy, Cleve, and Ashley, would you like to come and speak? Thank you, Lawrence.
Thank you, Miss Mayor. I appreciate that. Thank you and your council for the time that you guys devote to this management of our city. I certainly appreciate it, and I know everyone else does. Everyone's talked about what this money is supposed to go to, but I've not heard one person really go through those items. For the benefit of the crowd, I think I'll read from the comptroller's office where the hot money is supposed to go. Under Texas law, local hot revenue can be used only to directly promote tourism and the convention hotel industry. This means the proceeds should be spent on projects or events that result in visitors or attendees staying overnight in the community, generating more hotel occupancy tax. The Texas Municipal League describes this as the first part of a two-part test it calls the hotel tax two-step. Provided the first test of directly promoting tourism and hotel activity is met, the expenditures then must fit into one of the categories authorized by the statute. According to Comptroller's Data Analysis and Transparency Division, these categories include the first one, the construction, maintenance, and operation of a convention or visitor center. Next one, facilities and personnel for the registration of convention delegates. Third item, advertising and promotional programs to attract tourism. Next item, encouragement and promotion of the arts. Next item, historical restoration and preservation projects. Next item, advertising to encourage tourists to visit historic sites and museums. Next item, signage directing the public to sites and attractions frequently visited by tourists. Certain transportation systems serving tourists and hotel guests and for certain cities, sporting events for which the majority of the participants come from out of town. Qualifying sports facilities that routinely host regional and national tournaments in coliseums and multi-use facilities. I have the unique position of being one of the entities in town that generates or collects the hotel motel tax. I think that it's very important, at least from my perspective, that the people that generate this revenue are well represented on your board, because they need to know where that money's going. And no one knows how to put heads in beds any better than they. You have a multitude of short-term rental companies that do an excellent job. Sorry, I've been hoarse the last couple of days. You got a multitude of nice hotels here that understand how to put heads in beds. I really think that the main criteria for your board should be people that are familiar with the hotel industry and how to increase that industry to the benefit of both the city, the state, and the place where it all started. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Leroy.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Leroy.
All right, Ashley, Cliff.
Cliff Spring, 206 South Station. And I've been listening to a lot, my notes have changed over and over again. Really, we're just kind of wondering what's going on, and and the reasoning and the, how you're kind of building this committee. And I think it's great. I think probably the most important thing that I thought initially, and I still do, and I saw that, somebody mentioned it earlier at the beginning, is diversity in the group. One of the nice things, we were a recipient of a really large grant from y'all. And I think the approachability of the council, made it easier for information to go back and forth, in that process of requesting that information. And so I think a 7-member group is good. I know sometimes it's hard to get people, but I like the idea of diversity. Having 2 entities choose the whole group doesn't seem to ensure that diversity. It feels like it'd almost be better for each council member to pick one person and put on it, to get a better diversity. And the reason why I say that is we have a really excellent Chamber of Commerce right now. But that's not always the case. Not every chamber has been responsive to the community and what the community wants and what the community is voicing. Sometimes there's been a deaf ear. And I worry about that possibly happening in the future. It's happened before. And to put the majority of the picks with that entity, I think there's no safeguards if that happens again. Right now, it's great. I think Brett and his group is doing an excellent job. But I think the idea of post-event justification is a good thing. Of course, there are preservation projects. There's some historic provisions in the hot tax usage money that we, can apply for, and that'd be kind of different than some of the other 501(c)(3)s. And I understand that, but I think really I think it's all a great idea, and I know it pulls a little pressure from you guys, and if they're trained properly, knowing hot tax fund usage, and they get an opportunity to hear other municipalities how they use hot tax money, I think it could be a great asset to reinstall that group. But I just want to caution you on diversity and on that group, so that when those justifications are done, people are people are really listening from the application process before the money's asked for, before the budgets are done, to all the way past the justification process. When people come up, they should be approachable. It should be a diversified group. Really, that's about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the hotel group, I think should be well represented too.
Ashley, would you like to speak?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think that Cliff pretty much covered anything that I was going to say, except that, you know, we do need an option on that application for if it's not an event. There's a lot of historic things that happen that aren't a specific event. If you want us to make it an event, we can do that. But I prefer there be just other options in that.
Yeah,
application.
I mean, yeah, I think it can be event, project, you know, whatever.
Yeah, like if
It'll be
we're starting a new exhibit,
Yeah.
do we have to apply for 60 days of an event, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those things have to be worked in. And then advertising for like exhibits and things like that. I think that really falls into that category, and
Yeah.
that's not really an event either.
Yes.
Anyways, I think there should be a lot of different things taken into consideration for that application process. And I know Rockport does one that's not event based, so maybe we can look into some of that, what they do. And they present to their county commissioners, so I don't know.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good thoughts. All right. Thank you guys for being patient and waiting for your moment.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna make a quick response to what you were stating there, you know, per the 9 eligible categories, and again, this is state law that we all have to follow, and that's what's written in your Texas tax code, but like you were saying, one of the eligible qualifying items is historical restoration and preservation activities that directly promote tourism in the hotel convention industry. Historical restoration and preservation activities are promotional programs to encourage tourists and convention delegates to visit preserved historic sites or museums. So, you know, it's all in chapter 351 of the tax code. Yeah, okay.
I just want to make sure we don't have to qualify it as an event.
Yeah.
Just be really hard.
Yeah, we'll work on our word.
Right.
Yeah.
We all have to abide by it.
Yeah.
Are any other questions?
All right, any questions for Lawrence? Okay, everybody knows what we are making a decision on.
Should all of the people be from hotel? I mean, because 2 people get to pick it, right? City manager and the chamber.
Plus there's one council.
Well, they don't get to pick it, they're just on it.
Yeah, but they're on it.
But somebody's gonna pick them.
It's up
Are
to
you
you guys
proposing
how to
that they
make
all
the,
be hotel motel?
No, I'm just saying. It should be people who do the part to promote tourism. It should be tourism promoters, not people that don't want tourism and do that. So it should be, if we're gonna call them motelers, we're also gonna call them the people that do short-term rentals, the people that help generate the money. But I think that's viable. You know,
Well, I think if you look at the advisory
what was there
committee
before?
makeup before,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it was, you know, and maybe that's more explicit encouragement, but it says, you know, that they need to be members of the business community, which, I mean, obviously are affected by tourism,
Yes.
right? Members from condominium owners, because again, when this was written, we had condos and we had I mean, we didn't have hotels, we had motels, right? I mean, so that, at that point, they were clearly defining, we wanted condominium owners and we wanted, you know, motel operators. I mean, so,
and it said no member shall be on the reviewing end
right,
or receiving.
right.
Correct.
So you can't be
correct, you can't.
deciding and have your hand out too, right? So,
So can we add, you know, rather that those members will be part of those groups?
so you're suggesting that
Oh, somehow say somebody from the business community that relies on tourism. And then
the other 4 members are from,
short-term rentals, condo somebody's, hotel owners,
Well, 2 of the chamber ones say lodging entities.
so they have to. So
Right.
There's 2,
Yeah, so there's 2.
okay?
I mean, most likely the third
If
chamber,
you say lodging entities, it could be both of them could be short-term rentals and not.
I think there needs to be specifically hotel motel. Because we have hotel motel owners here
Yeah, so,
in the city.
yeah.
Yeah, but. They all pay a hot tax.
But the hot taxes, I mean, the greater amount of hot taxes STR, not hotel motel.
I know.
I mean, it should just say. I mean, lodging entities, that's all, I mean, isn't that Leroy, wouldn't you say lodging entities is a hotelier or an STR owner, right?
Leaves it kind of broad.
I think rather than an SCR owner, you're gonna be better off to go with some of your more successful management companies. That's what I would think.
Right.
It was my thought.
Well, they're more hands-on.
So just for the
Short-term
full
homeowner.
range, I had hotels, motels, condominiums, bed and breakfasts, and short-term rentals is all the different ones that,
All in one,
right, they would have to pay that tax.
anybody, but yeah.
And the reason I say that, Dave, is that's who's generating the tax revenue in the first place. So what we're basically wanting to do, I think, with all of this collectively is expand upon that utilization and that tax those taxes.
Mhm.
Okay, here's my thoughts on this. This is gonna be an ordinance change, gonna take 3 readings, right?
Correct.
We can tweak it every time.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah.
So let's move on. I want to make a motion to establish a new hot advisory committee.
I'll second.
Right, there's a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
So we're going to
Tweak
put the council member in there in this motion. That will.
Come back with
We're gonna-
proposal next time and
Yeah.
give it
Okay.
specifically written out.
Anyway,
Or do you want to just go with what we've worked out, though? Add the one council member, chamber gets 2, plus the alternate city gets 2.
I think that's what they're saying. Yeah, to come back with that the next time. Yes.
Yeah. Second reading would clarify how many members.
Yes.
Okay, based on what I just said, though, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any further discussion?
Nope.
Okay, Fran, please call the roll.
Yes.
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 Councilmember Krieger,
No.
Councilmember Hart,
Yes.
Miller,
Yes.
Mayor Moore.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, thank you. Item Q, discuss and take possible action on renaming the JP Luby Pier Overlook Point and Harbor Master's Office. There's not an actual specific item in here, so just a discussion.
So this came up, I guess a couple months ago, I brought it to a couple different council members' attention. You know, when the JP Luby Pier was completely demolished, I said, you know, hey, it's technically a new facility and most likely probably needs to go through the naming process, and didn't really push one way or the other, a particular person. Or one idea I threw out was, you know, sometimes names, you know, they're trying to get a facility that might last 50 years, you know, maybe the name doesn't stick real good. And so sometimes, like with naming high schools recently, it's easier to name a high school veterans than it is Davy Crockett. And so one idea was, hey, let's have we could possibly name it a memorial pier that memorializes, you can do whatever, but it was like a thing of people that passed away at sea. That was one idea from my old hometown in Cordova. They have a memorial pier and they put these really cool brass plaques on it, you know, for people that died at sea. So that kind of was what prompted the conversation. It led to another idea by Councilmember Owens that said, hey, you know, the overlook point, which is, you know, this point right here, would also maybe make a good memorial overlook point. And then as well as the new harbor master office is coming up. So the idea was then expanded to all 3 facilities. We have been contacted by the JP Luby family. You know, they are interested in their grandfather and their dad keeping that name. So that is on the table also. After looking into it, one thing that Lawrence and I were looking at was a lot of cities have a naming policy.
So they have, it's about a 2 to 3 page document on the processes of how a city goes about naming a facility or a, whatever it might be, a building, a beach, whatever it is. So that's maybe something that would, you guys might be interested in us developing first to give you guys some, just a way to move forward in the naming process of facilities. I mean, I've been doing a lot of research on naming things the last couple weeks. There was a lot of naming back in the 80s, and then it kind of quieted down. And the trend kind of switched from, in the 80s, there was a lot of politicians. It was a lot of county commissioners getting things named after them. And then kind of in the 90s, it transitioned to more citizen stuff, like the Scott and Joan Holt Paradise Pond, Tony Amos Beach. We kind of went away from naming politicians like they were back in the 70s and 80s. So there's definite trends. There's been a lot of naming trends in the last couple of years, so that's definitely changed. So our recommendation was possibly get you guys to say, hey, go develop a naming policy and bring it back to us to give you guys a little guidance and something that might help you guys make sense of how to name stuff.
We have a lot of new buildings coming up, so there's a lot of things to possibly name if we so choose. So if you guys think that's a good idea.
I think we need to go ahead and move forward with some kind of policy
Okay.
or whatever we need to do, because I think it would just expedite things.
Can we provide some criteria?
Yep.
Kelly?
No, I agree. I think that's the road that we need to go down at this point. My passion was developing some type of memorial for the people that made a living on the water in Port Aransas, or maybe they just call Port Aransas their home port for their boat, to recognize and remember those people, and then also remember those that we've lost
Oh, yeah.
while at sea.
I agree.
Well, I think
So
that's a great
That's kind of
idea.
where my
I
passion
like that
came
idea.
from. And then we were doing the Ansel Brun Rep here, and I was like, well, maybe we need to look at naming the new harbor master office. I mean, I can't think of the harbor master without thinking of Marley Nixon myself, but just whatever anybody decide, that we just need to come up with some kind of policy on how we go forward.
Yeah.
And for the future, whenever people decide. So I like the idea of developing some kind of
Good idea.
policy for that.
Sounds good.
Any other thoughts?
I love the idea of having a memorial for, that way it's not just one person, because every few years you want to change it because,
People could add it.
Yeah.
You could add little plaques.
But I was saying we
Keep
could
it
do brick
going.
pavers or something,
Yeah.
people want to do stuff like that too.
I like that idea a
In
lot.
memory of or whatever, so just on that, but
Yeah.
then,
I love
like we
the
said, we got
master
a lot of
idea.
facilities coming up.
Right, we do,
All
we
over
do.
from Harvey,
Yeah,
that people are gonna probably have a passion about naming them, so.
What the mayor gonna
Yep.
do
Nobody
the,
named Harvey.
No.
Probably already left his name
Oh.
here.
the
Yeah.
beach, golly, what am I trying to say right here?
beach.
I think it's a great idea. Dave.
He didn't want to be on the police department. He wanted to be on the Public Works building, wasn't it?
Who, Charles?
Yeah.
I don't remember. Do you?
Well, Sherry had called and said that, remember?
No, he wanted to be on the police.
Yeah. Oh, I'll dig it up.
Said it would, I
I
don't.
think it was police.
I thought it was police too.
Yeah, I think that was
It was police, and the only thing she called back and said, it's
It's
not
not
Gerald
Junior. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she corrected us because I think
Actually, I thought Candace, or that was Tony Amos. Yeah.
we had Junior on there, didn't we?
Yes, we
Right.
did. And
Yeah.
and it had to be updated with.
Okay.
Okay.
So I will do that.
When you can take a 2-minute break.
As soon as, yes.
At some point here,
Yes. Okay.
Mom.
Well.
Okay, is there any further discussion on item Q?
No.
All right.
So we just direct staff to make them.
Yes, for future consideration.
Already, yeah.
All right. Is it your leisure to take a 5-minute break?
Please.
All right, we'll take a 5-minute break.
Please, please.
Thank you.
Oh, you're gonna put Dave off his time.
I know.
It's up.
Left. No, she's coming back.
I'm so excited.
Oh, really?
Who's that? Thank you.
Yeah, well, yeah, I did tell her. We'll just-
Story when they come.
We'll do it right before. All right.
Yeah. Okay, okay, all right. We're gonna move on, reconvene. Item R, discuss and take possible action on the RTA interlocal agreement.
Oh, we're doing the RTA one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I was spacing, I was reading. I think we should go into executive session to discuss
Okay.
this topic.
Request to go into executive session under section 551.
Can we do it at the end with the other?
Yep, that's what.
We could do it at the end with the other. You guys want to just do it all at once?
Yeah.
Okay, so let's push that one to the end.
Okay.
Okay, good idea.
Mayor's Square, it's under 071.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. So item S, general discussion and possible action on a food truck ordinance.
Billy left. He does live at the lighthouse, you know. So Billy had called me and I told him I'd put this on here, and I guess he just spoke at the very beginning. And he wants to do this additional little small trailer on his property, and it's not going anywhere else. He explained it to you too, Wendy. And I don't know who else, but and he's, I guess, put in his small kitchen and satisfied the health department at county. And now he's asking if he can do that. So, and he's not here.
Right, he doesn't want to do the same rule right now, and he explained it. Right now, the only way to cook outside in a portable trailer or food truck, whatever it is it's the same menu, and Rick can explain it better, but it's the same menu. If you're serving, enchiladas and tacos inside, you
Yeah.
can serve enchiladas and tacos outside. If you're serving enchiladas and tacos inside and only snow cones outside, that's a no-no. Has to be the same menu.
I wish he was here. I have questions because
I know, I wish he was.
I mean,
got
I
to
have a
stay too.
restaurant, so I
Yeah.
understand the same rule if we do anything outside. I mean, we do caterings, but not very many, but I'm just wondering why he's already got one building?
Well, he built this structure.
Yeah.
And you can see it kind of in the image there.
So I don't.
Rick, is that the structure right there? It's the long,
I think it is.
it's the one on the platform, right?
Yes.
And it is a certified kitchen.
He's making it a certified kitchen. He's putting it.
He's got a grease trap and everything.
So,
That the health department will require.
Right.
So,
but he's wanting to put a food.
but he has, well, it's not a big food, it's a little small trailer, and he's got it out there by the boats. for
Yeah, he
people
wants
get
to, he
on,
wants to do
you know.
the trailer cooking over here.
Right.
Want to cook in the building, and he and I had conversations, and
Yeah.
I just told him that it's not my rule.
Right.
He doesn't feel like he should have to cook in the fixed structure, which the ordinance currently requires, if he already owns this other structure that's more conducive to cooking. It's
The portable unit.
it just happens to be by definition and in reality, a portable, so our ordinance doesn't allow that, and the hot dog issue always comes up. And again, that was when we were directed to tighten that up. Like kind means like kind. We don't want to put a bunch of hot dog stands. So at the time, at La Playa, she orchestrated that with the owner. But by the strict interpretation now, and the one we hold to, is that she'd have to sell fajitas out there.
Right.
Margaritas, which wouldn't be bad.
Yeah.
Not hot dogs.
But that's the way the rule
But
is.
she was
that-
grandfathered in.
The idea-
Same.
Right,
And-
the idea was,
Yeah.
is that
Yeah.
to do anything from a temporary on your property, all other things being equal, parking, safety, you have to have a fixed structure. You got to be committed to the land with that fixed structure. And
So
if you
he
do that,
could do the both, as long as it's the same thing there, the same thing there.
Yeah.
but again, our direction, our marching orders have been, we got to march into the fixed structure and get that burrito. And it has to be equal to or better than the one we go out to the temporary structure.
Yeah, it can't be pretend.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, it has to be,
Right.
the restaurant has to exist. It can't just be a building with a menu on it.
Oh, yeah, well, he's got the grease trap, he's got everything.
I did talk to Mr. Gaskins, obviously, and then, listening to him again today. I mean, my interpretation is that he's not requesting and that, let me know what your thought is, Councilmember Kruger, because you put this on here, but not requesting we create a food truck ordinance.
No, I
To
don't
where
think so.
we're gonna allow food trucks in town and we're gonna deviate. And I'm not saying, I'm not making a judgment one way or the other, if we should or we shouldn't. But I don't think that was the point of his discussion. And I don't know, I mean,
No, I
it
don't-
sounds like that's not what the
No,
point of
after I
your
talked to
agenda
him.
item is.
And it's, I think he wants to change that one sentence in
He
there.
wants to get rid
amend
of the
it.
same thing.
Yeah.
Mhm. Once we deviate, we open the door.
But is that, I thought Rick said that was a health code regulation for the.
No, the same thing? No,
No, it's not. So it's only the city.
Yeah, it's a
Okay.
city rule.
Everything still has to meet the health codes, whatever
Yeah.
you're looking out of, all those regulations. They're not ours, they're the county health.
And I think that what he explained to me was, to Rick's point, he's got an established building. He's prepared to cook whatever he's gonna make there. I don't know what his menu is exactly, but he also has or would like to have a catering kitchen, I guess is the right word, so that he has a on-site kitchen that's off-site, so maybe, that's not, he's not gonna drive around town with his
Oh,
food
no,
truck.
It's not legal.
He wants to have, instead of maybe having two permanent structures or cooking everything in that one structure, he wants to have a separate kitchen, basically, that's
Yeah.
Mobile.
a mobile. Not because he wants to be mobile, but because it's easier and you can readily find a mobile kitchen, well-equipped on wheels, so to speak, and then he would cook food out of that. And if, there's no food cooking December, January, and February, he can shut it down, mothball it, be done, instead of,
So it's real comparable to what they do out at Reds in Palmia, right? So they've got Reds, they've got the little trailer outside out back.
Which I believe was changed to a PUD document.
I think, yes, I would agree with what you're saying, David, that in my mind, that's
Still
a
the same
similar
concept.
thing, but
Because they shut that down. And I think it is same there.
No, it's different. Yeah.
It is.
It's different because it was basically a zoning change permitted through a PUD application.
right.
Well, I think he can already do what he wants to do. He just doesn't want to do it.
Well,
The,
he doesn't want to cook in the building that he built.
just cook.
He
it,
doesn't want to
cook
do
it,
the
cook
same,
it, do
same.
the other one, do the
He
same
just
thing.
wants to cook in the one.
I'd cook in both.
Yeah.
Otherwise he wouldn't be here.
Right, if he could put a catering food truck, trailer, whatever on site, set it up and cook hot dogs in both, or whatever, and I don't know what it's.
That's
Yeah.
what he said.
I wish he would have stayed. So anyway. Okay.
So, I mean, do you want to see staff try to figure out if there's a way to change it? Are we, I don't, and that would be a council directive, obviously, but I mean, I
Right.
don't know. If people
Um,
are happy with the ordinance the way it is, then maybe there's,
I'm not in favor of changing the existing ordinance.
What's the reasoning behind it, I guess, Kelly? If you could just help me, I'm not a restaurateur, so I mean, why is there that same? I mean, what's your thoughts on
I
that?
don't know, but I've had to buy that for quite some time myself.
Me too.
But is there a
That
good,
on times whenever I want to do something, I have to serve the exact same thing that I'm serving at both.
Yeah, that's
locations,
true.
so.
That's true.
The issue would be if you remove the same rule,
okay,
it basically gives every restaurant or food sale business the ability to park a food truck in their parking lot. So, so if you go down, if you drive down Allister, that's about 20 plus
Yeah.
businesses.
Well, even in.
I
our
mean,
parking lot, we have-
it could be the donut shop. It could be the new board house building because there's gonna be a restaurant in there. It could be the little ice cream place in the old Washateria Strip Center. It could be the VFW. It could be Treasure. It could be
Yes, we get it.
yeah, I could name about 20. So basically you could end up with food trucks all over town. If you remove
Snow
the
cones.
same rule is the one single link in the chain that is preventing the city being overrun by food trucks. And if you remove that one link, it is game over.
So he can still do what he wants to do, just serve the same thing in both places.
That's what, yeah, that's what I was sort of getting at. I'm not-
Okay. Just make the, yeah.
Well, if he wants to do anything different, I guess he can come back.
But that holds true, that's to all retail, right? If you're a t-shirt shop, you can't sell tires.
No, it's food.
It's
It's
food.
food sales.
Yeah.
It's food sales.
It's,
But I mean,
If you
like,
have if you have a
same thing.
t-shirt shop and you're selling tie-dye t-shirts inside.
right,
During the summer, you can set a pop-up on your property. Don't
Correct.
place parking,
But
set
I'm
it up
sure
and
they're
sell those
selling-
Same t-shirts outside.
sell items which they're trying to get rid of, which
Those
they don't have
are-
inside
those
anymore.
are, that's the same rule.
It's difficult.
Okay, well, we can, I'll just we can just let
So we're
it
not
know
talking
the
about
same.
food truck ordinance?
Huh?
We're not talking about food truck ordinance?
No,
Oh.
it's under certain, what was that number?
It's under business. It's under.
Yeah.
It's under,
Two sections.
Yeah.
Business regulations and
I can't remember the number right off the top. of
And
my head,
zoning.
but
in two places.
You can't go to our ordinances and put food truck in, you're never gonna find it.
Right.
So anyway, okay. Let's just move on with no action there.
Okay. All right, item T, general discussion and possible action on requesting a presentation from the Texas General Land Office on the Dune Protection Act and the dune permitting process.
I guess in one of our meetings at the very end in the discussion, I asked y'all if y'all wanted to have a seminar on dune permitting and stuff like that. And I thought everybody was kind of on the same page, and Dave said he was gonna set up a meeting, but then it says I had to come back and we have to vote on it. But I'm just asking if that's what somebody wants to do. If you're interested, that's fine. If not, that's fine too.
I would just offer, and I mentioned it in my presentation, GLO is looking at a handful of new amendments.
Mhm.
Just from a timing standpoint, that they're probably still months off, but that it might be good if you're gonna go through some kind of exercise. It might be best to see what they're gonna change. That's a suggestion that is out there right now currently.
Who takes precedence? Our management plan or GLOs? Or it's in certain areas, and how many other people have to touch the permitting? To ask the GLO to come in, they can only speak to theirs.
Correct. So our coastal management plan is written into law. Port Aransas coastal management.
Geez, Rick. Wow.
Adam 63 Anchor Drive. So our coastal management plan was adopted, accepted by the GLO, so it became part of the statute. It's law. There are certain Texas provisions that will trump ours as they arrive through various legislative actions. But for the most part, ours prevails. They've delegated the authority to city council. They get a bite at the apple with comment. But it's comment only, and very seldom, I can't recall that we've ever brought something where they've not approved it. We wouldn't do that. Unless we wouldn't do that. So we make sure that when we bring you something, all the engineers involved are in agreement, and the GLO is in agreement.
And you'll get over the years, you'll get a change in the staffing at the GLO. Like, for example, from 05 until about 2010. The staff there, we got along really good, and there wasn't much. There wasn't a whole lot of the GLO saying, hey, we have a conflicting rule and we're going to fight you tooth and nail that our rule wins the day. It was Jerry Patterson was the land commissioner. He loved flying down to Port Aransas. He'd come down here for all kinds of events, and he would always brag about how great the dunes were here. So it comes and goes. And then from 2010 to 2015, you had turnover at the GLO, and you have new staff that's a little greener than the previous staff. And so there's this ebb and flow of over the last 20 years of, kind of pushing a little bit back and forth with the GLO. If they push us, we push back. So, over those conflicting rules, not all of them conflict.
Interpretation.
Or interpretation, because you got a lot of people interpreting those rules. So you have
you have P and Z, you have staff, you have the submitting engineer, you have the reviewing engineer. And then you have GLO legal. So you have a lot of people chiming in on what they think the definition of a dune is. Because the definition of a dune is pretty vague. And so you can go through the whole coastal management plan and you could get into nitpicking fights just in the section that has the definitions in it, because not everyone's in agreement on those definitions.
You find this.
So it's,
Yeah, the permit has to involve minimization.
oh yeah,
It's an abstract concept. I mean, so Palmia only puts in 150 lots instead of 190 that they could. Is that minimization? But those are the kind of words that appear in the plan that, you know, are difficult. And when the GLO overreaches and just really starts, you know, delaying the process in some unfair way, as David mentioned, and we've marched up with legislator in hand, our, you know, representative in hand, and had a face-to-face. And
yeah, that's one of the biggest arguments we've gotten in the past is time frame of reviews has been a big one. Because if you can push it back, you know, 15 days, then it throws everything off another month and a half, and you know, so things like that.
But currently, we have a good relationship. We they take their job very seriously. They're very protective of the dunes, and we do too. We follow the rules and so. But the amendments are out there. We've talked to them. We've had a phone call. We've weighed in on our comments to those amendments. It's all things with the boardwalks, number of boardwalks, public accessibility. I kind of touched on that, the whole MOEMAT thing. All these things are being proposed right now. We weighed in, and so those will be forthcoming, I think, probably within the
Who knows?
Yeah.
It could be 6 months.
yeah, it could be 6 months, but those are out there.
Okay, so do y'all want to or
I think we
not?
should wait until.
Oh, well, it doesn't matter to me, so
And
whatever y'all want to do.
Should we have somebody from the coastal management plan come and talk about it, since it sounds like they are the ultimate?
Well, I'd like to hear from the GLO myself.
We're the
The
ultimate authorities
Yeah.
on dune permits. We're in charge.
Okay,
So
well, it's all in the book.
I know, but
They offer,
They
I asked,
offer their
and if y'all don't
opinions.
want to, hey, that's fine. We'll do it some other group. or
Yeah,
something.
we recently met with them. We met with them 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago, we met with the entire GLO team and we walked about, I don't know, I think we did about what, 10 dune walkovers with their staff and city staff. And one of the biggest things we looked at was mitigate, you know, how mitigation's going, you know, what the process should be with follow-up, you know, and we admitted, you know, hey, you know, we can do better at following up with mitigation. So we walked some of the city proper ones, and then we got down and did Pioneer, we did Mustang Royale, we did Beach Walk, we did Cinnamon Shores, we did Palmia. So you know, we got a good working relationship with them. And
What are their thoughts on the looks of our?
there's always room for improvement by the city. I mean, like one thing I just mentioned, you know, we can do better at follow up on mitigation. But
we remind them often that we honestly have the most robust dune system
Yeah.
on the entire Texas coast,
and they agree. They're like, yeah, you guys benefit from a good dune permitting program that's been very active. A lot of cities, like for example, Surfside, they've had to go in and take over the dune permitting in Surfside because the city of Surfside basically just said, we can't do it. We can't even field a board, can't hire engineers. And so, you know, so a couple of municipalities, the state has had to go in and take over. We're not one of them. We're a very, I would say we're probably the most active, responsible dune permitting authority in the state, because I think we're better than Corpus. I know we're better, well, the county, Nueces County. I know we're better than them. We're better than South Padre. We're better than Galveston.
Galveston doesn't have any dudes.
Yeah, I mean, I think we do the best, I think we do the best job in the state. Yeah, does GLO just walk away and say, oh, you guys have the best dunes, we're never gonna scold you or, say you're doing this? No, that's not their approach. They're professionals, like Rick said. And so, we have good heated discussion with them, even though we think we're the best in the state. We still have, good, robust discussion and review process. So we think we're doing good.
All right, so does the council want to have the GLO come and give a talk?
They said no. Set it up with
I think what I heard was at a future date.
Yeah.
So I think revisit.
Okay. All right, we'll take no action at this time. Item U, general discussion on the Old Town Preservation Advisory Board.
Well, I put this on here because I thought that Rick and them were ringing, I thought Mallory and they were all gonna be here, and I thought it was gonna be on the agenda, but Mallory had some emergencies. So I'm just asking to table this and we'll move on.
Okay.
Bring it back.
All right. Item V, general discussion and possible action on the Port Street parking lot payment system.
Okay, just a quick update. We've been working on, now that the parking lot is well underway, they're chugging and moving along. We need to have discussion on how we envision. We don't well, I'll tell you what staff is thinking. We don't envision it being free, just open to whoever to go park there. We think there needs to be rules and guidelines. We personally think that it should be a paid parking that maybe like if you had a special civic event, you could go pop the gates open and make it free. But for the most part, it would be a paid venue. We looked at a bunch of different types of payment methods. A lot of these new kiosks, they have apps. A lot of them where there are no gates. You drive in, you go over to the kiosk, you enter your license plate, put in a credit card. You say, I'm going to stay for 6 hours, and you leave. But then those kind of systems, or you could do it by an app. But those systems, what they have in the big cities is they have these parking attendants that drive through with these monitors that read license plates, and they drive through and they read these license plates, and it's communicating back to that kiosk, and it's telling you who's paid. Boop, green light, green light, green light, red light. And so, this person didn't pay. You can get out, put a boot on their wheel, put a ticket on their window. But that's labor intensive, and it involves software and license plate reading, and it just gets a little complicated. And what we envision is something like the Corpus Christi Airport, where one of the driveways is the entry, and you go through and there's a gate, and you hit a button and a ticket pops out, and you take your ticket and you drive in. And if you leave within 20 minutes, you can get out for free. But if you then stay for certain times, 1 to 3 hours, 3 to 6, or whatever that time slot is, then you're gonna pay. And when you exit through the exit, you're gonna hit the kiosk, you're gonna slide in your card, it's gonna say you owe $9, and you put in your credit card, you pay, and the gate opens and you leave. So it does not require maintenance. Yes, people might drive through the gate. You would fence it. We did look at it. We think it's easily escapable. So meaning you could basically from anywhere around the parking lot, you could just pop the curb and 4-wheel drive and get away. So you would have to put up a chain link fence around it, but that's the cost of doing business. But so we're just looking for input. How you guys think we should move forward? We got time we would have to put in some electric. So before we're trying to figure out, before we pour all the concrete in the aprons of the driveways, we need to kind of spot where these kiosk or gates might be so that we can at least run our electrical conduit.
But as far as pricing and all that stuff, we could do that at a later date. But I do need to get moving on what kind of system we're gonna use, because I gotta get that electrical conduit in the ground before they pour concrete.
So are there, I generally agree with where you're going, but are there any other options where it doesn't have to print a ticket? They can, because I mean,
Yeah.
we're dealing with outside, we're dealing with salt air, we're dealing with high humidity.
Yeah, but that ticket's gonna stay in your car.
I understand that
Yeah,
portion, but I
yeah.
mean, but that unit now,
Yeah, oh. Well, I mean, I mean, here's what we decided as a staff. We do not want a system that requires code enforcement or the police to be driving through that parking lot looking for
I agree with that.
violators.
Is there any other options that could do something similar to what you're talking about that doesn't require a machine to be loaded full of paper?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Well, I think that's something that can be discussed at a later date. I think the staff is asking, do we want to do pay for parking?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Isn't that your basic question?
Yeah,
How many places are how many parking spots?
I think it's
And what's the
one,
expected revenue?
160, 170.
Oh,
No, it's bigger. Yeah.
Okay, so the expected revenue is large enough to.
It depends on usage. I mean, here was, and we were trying to remember a year ago when we went forward with this, it kind of came out of the STR group. That was the original concept, was overflow STR parking. And then we said also it could be civic use for if we ever expanded City Hall. It would be civic overflow. And then possibly a third category might be getting on the ferry and walking, but I don't see that as a big one. So mostly we're thinking overflow.
So if you're talking, I mean, how much you're gonna charge, I guess, and.
Well, that's something we could work on in the future. I mean, it needs to be more than what I can call a storage unit and say, hey, can I pull my car into your storage unit for a month? It needs to be a lot more than that.
And a minimum of how long they can.
And maybe there's a timeline,
Yeah, I was just wondering, when you figure, like you said, electrical, gates, maintenance. I mean, that's not free. I don't know, Lawrence, have you done any like return on investment calculation on this at all, or?
No, because it's just we think if we start getting stricter.
Then you gotta put a gate up.
Yeah, if we start getting stricter on-street parking, like we've talked about with our parking throughout the city, then you're gonna see an increase in people needing parking. But right now, we could stripe it and leave it open for a while, but
I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I really think, I don't know if I agree with you. I mean, you'd have to look at. I mean, we don't have any parking limits over, for example, Roberts Point Park, right?
We don't have any what?
Parking limits. People can park over there. We have.
I think we have a maximum. I think it's.
Yeah, but there was a discussion two months ago, maybe
Yeah.
about enforcement on that.
Yeah.
Right? So. I just don't, I mean, I don't want to spend a lot of money, put the fence up and everything like that. If we're talking a couple hundred, I don't know what your dollar value is.
Yeah,
$5 a day.
we're just guessing, David. We don't.
Yeah.
Well, I think if we're going to give ourselves the opportunity to ever do it in the future, we need to do something now. So at the very least, if to David's point, if we put in the infrastructure and leave the gate open because we want to be charitable and let everybody have free parking, then that's our decision. But if we choose to do nothing and then later on go back and
Then it's
cut
gonna
the
cost
street and we
twice
have
as
to put in conduit and we can't, then it's not cost effective to do that either. And so.
At least got to get the conduit in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would, at the very least, I would direct staff to go ahead with that expense. I mean, we're already paying $1 million for a parking lot. What's another $20,000
Right.
conduit or whatever it is? I mean, that way we have the advantage of putting in this equipment and charging for parking at some point if we want to.
Yeah.
I mean, you go down to the American Bank Center in Corpus Christi, and every single event, they don't have anything but people standing out there with their hand out, $10 a car.
Oh, yeah.
And it's a moneymaker for them. And so I think that I wasn't on council, so I didn't choose to put in a parking lot over there. But if this is a new city asset, we need to use it to our advantage. And if this is the time to put in conduit and to plan for the future, then I think we need to do it.
I agree.
How about at this stage, we put in the conduit and then I would come back to you guys with the system.
Right.
That's what I would
That's
agree.
true. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on item B? All right. 6, city manager report, update on closure of Oak Street between Allister Street and Church Street.
All right, I just got it real quick. It's going to P and Z on the 29th, and then first reading will be back to you guys on December 15th. And it's 3 readings to close.
Is
Any,
that all?
any public
just
opposition or
for now.
anybody heard any?
No, I mean-
Anything?
It's been in the paper and.
Water district needs an easement.
Yeah, water district will need an easement, so some utility easements, but
Utilities there, but we've not heard anything.
Have you notified the homeowners around that area? Have you sent out the notices?
And we actually extended a little bit further. We notified a little further because of the Church Street impact. Want to give everybody fair notice.
Sure. Okay, anything else, David?
Nope.
All right, staff reports. Darla?
It is. And why?
Half report. You have the written report. Of course, this is the first month of the new fiscal year. Happy New Year. So I don't have a whole lot of economic indicators to give year to date, but our occupancy tax for October was down just a tad compared to last year at about 2.5%. Our sales tax was up 10%, and golf carts compared to last year are about 500 ahead of where we were last year. We've got the 23 plates ordered. Hopefully they will be here by Christmas. So the week between Christmas and New Year's, we'll be able to start selling 23 plates. Everybody can be prepared for the new year. Thanksgiving is typically when we quit enforcing beach parking permits and golf cart plates. So we got to settle out for the year and close out and get all those permits balanced. So you have any questions? I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. No questions.
yeah,
for
that
Darla?
was, I
All right.
added that sentence.
Lawrence, you're up again.
You're a lot tonight.
Supposed to dig in
trenches.
Yes. Yeah, we got that project underway. I guess I'll touch on that one. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't have it on my list. So since our last update, Roberts Point Park Pier and Charlie Pasture Pier, handrails are installed, light poles installed, 95% electrical items installed. Pouring abutment to attach pier to the land is underway. Charlie's Pasture bulkhead. Forming and pouring bulkhead sheet panels for right there. Oh, the blowouts section. Well, we knew that. Dows are in for the sidewalks on the pier, and we're going to start forming the sidewalks soon. Port Street parking lot, installed light poles and electrical. That is in progress.
That's AEP, right? I mean, it's the contractor, but AEP is the owner of the poles, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Formed areas for the pour. We'll pour the concrete tomorrow. That'll be one of 5 phases of a pour. Leanable, turnable trail system. I don't think I said that right. Is it leanable? Leanable?
Yeah.
Leona Bell Turnbull.
Leanna Bell. I apologize. I'll work on that.
Southern Texas.
Yeah, it's hard. It's tough. For the north and south trails as well. Finishing the punch list items, smoothing out rutting.
From pigs.
Yes. Yeah, the pigs have really already destroyed some sections that quick.
The pigs are absolutely out of control up and down the whole island.
I don't think they like,
Point.
they don't like the color.
I don't like the.
Yeah.
Oh,
No, I'm just kidding.
And there's no stopping them.
yeah.
So also we're installing the final ADA items. Going back to what we were just talking about for the Port Street. We're looking at a system called Data Park as the brand. We're just now figuring these items out, but it's similar to what Corpus Christi, the international airport has. It's the same system. So we're looking at possibly the same exact thing, and I'll be getting more information real soon to city manager Parsons. We're still just in the midst of figuring this out. They are pouring the concrete today, so it was a good discussion here.
And they're gonna fix the
Cut in the street.
cut.
Correct. I did talk to him about that. Yes. Yeah. So the specs called, according to Jeff, is a new guy on scene now, cement stabilized, soil. And I just said, look, put anything you want in there. Let's just get this smooth for our drivers. But he was very,
Well, I mean, they can't, we're not just, I mean, he's got to put asphalt back down.
No. Yeah.
correct. Yeah.
In the construction contract, he's not required to do that right now.
Yeah.
He has a time frame, so.
He did mention that, yeah, exactly. It's gonna be in a phase for whenever other asphalt.
Yeah,
being called
he
for.
gets to, when he has an asphalt phase, that's when he'll do
Okay,
it.
well, in the
So-
meantime.
Yeah, in the meantime, that's what we told him.
That is what I asked of him today, is like, at least fill it in. And mainly like whenever we do street repairs, we'll make cuts like that, right? To repair utilities on the street and everything like that. And we'll go back and put fill in there. And as the car is running over, it'll always kind of pack in. We'll put more fill, pack it, usually about the 2-week mark is really when it should be packed enough to just, put your cap on it with concrete or asphalt. But yeah, he's under the understanding that it is kind of hollowed out from rutting. That needs, at least be back where people don't have to slow down right there. So we had that discussion today. But yes, the final patch will come. The gas system is slightly behind schedule, mainly to a backlog on materials, but January we're expecting to receive a large portion of those items. Still constructing in phase 1. Phase 2A has begun. Phase 1 is south of Beach Walk. Phase 2 is Island Mooring area.
And we did have a discussion with them about the, one of our employees witnessed some improper, not welding, but improper coupling attachment. So we did have discussions with the contractor about doing it properly. We're gonna cut this one section out and test it, but I think he was very responsive to our serious concern about doing it incorrectly, so.
Correct. Yep. So for all of our concerns, they have obliged. So that's been going good. And per the project you were discussing, we were looking at adding some trailers. Mobile
Yeah, one mobile trailer, office trailer. across
right over
the
there.
street.
Yep. So we were locating water and sewer. Finally got that located, but that'll be a little project in itself. Delivery should be on the 28th of those units. We'll have one here and then one in the parking lot.
For the STR court, 2 court?
2 court clerks and STR clerk.
Yeah, right. And then temporary for lifeguards.
Any other questions?
It sounds like you'd be very, very busy. I would like to see next time, and David and Lawrence, and obviously all the staff. I mean, we have a lot of capital improvement projects underway. And I know it takes an enormous amount of time for every one of you. I mean, I see all of you out there, and I mean, like you said, just spending half a day figuring out gas line situations or whatever can take a lot of time. But I think it's important, and you guys do a great job of keeping us updated, but to really kind of expand on that. And I don't know if it's a 1-page white paper or something like that every month, but to keep us, updated on how much you are doing, because I know it's a lot, and before we plan to add 10 more projects to your list. I'd like to, for us to really have a good grasp on where we are on the ones that we're working on, because it's going to be important that we kind of finalize some of those before we get into the next 30.
Yep, we can gladly do that.
I completely agree. We'll work on getting a presentation on pretty much a broader scope of all projects. So that way we have a running continual list of all of them. I agree that there are a ton of projects going on here, way more than what I experienced in my last town, a lot.
Yeah.
And
thank God you showed up.
yeah,
I think you didn't have a category 4 hurricane.
right. You got FEMA monies, we have GLO, we have the street bond just passed.
Yeah.
Right.
We didn't even get into our capital improvement projects that were approved right this last budget.
Exactly.
There's a lot going on. So yeah, It's exciting.
Welcome to Port A.
Yes, okay.
Thanks, Lauren.
Thanks, Lawrence. You got a great
He
attitude.
still has a smile on his face.
All right, Mr. Johnson.
Rick,
Oh,
Ricky.
oh, Rick.
Rick.
All right. Tell us about your projects.
No projects. I got building permits. I've got 294 in the books, 45 currently in review, which totals 339. All of last year, we did 274. So congratulations to my staff. If they happen to have nothing better to do than be watching this meeting, they do a great job. So thank all of those guys for doing some incredible numbers with essentially the same amount of people for the most part. Short-term rentals, 2409. We got 20 currently pending review. So again, 2429 right now registered. Complaints, 8 since last meeting, brings the total to 74 complaints. So obviously this time of year, we don't expect them any, and that's what we're seeing. Councilman Christensen had asked a little bit about the scrubbing. So let me tell you, just spend a couple minutes and talk about that. Well, no, let me first apologize. Let me first go. I don't know if you guys have seen the commercials for the guy chasing 18-wheelers, the attorney chasing 18-wheelers that refers to himself as the Hammer. I'm taking that title from him and giving it to Carla and Roxanne because yesterday in court, they hammered some of our short-term rental violations for upwards of 25 grand. So
That should be 30.
all right. I didn't want to brag, but anyway, they've been doing a great job of and thanks for council for the directive for zero tolerance, because that makes it a lot easier on us to apply these things. There is no tolerance, and if you're in the business of short-term rentals, play by the rules. But congratulations to you guys, for Carla for writing them, and you guys for prosecuting them, because they're getting the message. And with that, so we've got 86 short-term rental violations that resulted in citations that have been processed and paid. And we've got 107 total written for short-term rental violations. So it's adding up. It's adding up quickly. So, and Darla also thanks for having to, get us all the numbers and do the financial part that, again, it's a big teamwork effort. So we're collecting it. To the scrubbing. So the scrubbing wasn't the magic bullet that I kind of expected, and I'll explain why, although it's working, because we're finding these violations. So right now, I think Carla showed me the report, which has about 55 line items, violations per page. There's about 15 pages of those that the scrubbing is finding. So obviously do the math, 15 times 55, a lot. The choke point is the way the system scrubs, for those that understand, and I know enough to be dangerous, but websites have what they call metadata, little data points that you don't see. You just see the pretty pictures of the houses and the wording, 5 bedroom, 4 bath. But embedded in there, you find the data pieces that actually kind of create that web page. And I mention that only because location is critical to the process. And when you go to VRBO or Airbnb, you notice they never give you an address. They give you a map with little dots, kind of shows you the vicinity, and they do that on purpose. But the way they do that is essentially with latitude, longitude coordinates. So I'm going through this in-depth discussion because when that latitude, longitude website property is compared to what's registered, it's using an address. It may not be the exact address. It may show 123 Seahawk on the website because of that latitude, longitude, but it actually is 125 Seahawk, which is registered. So every one of those items that the scrubbing pulls out has to be touched by a person to go through that. And it's an arduous process. Some are quickly resolved and some, require a little bit more digging. Just because that frustrated me, because I like working smarter rather than harder, I called Corpus, who's using the same system. They've got about 3,900 short-term rentals currently registered. I talked to a nice guy. He's code enforcement, but they've got 4 code enforcement and 1 clerk that's going through that. So it's very labor intensive, although they give us the information that makes it quicker than us searching through VRBO and everything else. Our short-term rental person we've talked about, that'll help. That'll add 1 more person and should help us go through there a lot quicker. But it's not a magic process. It doesn't pop out 5 violations and they're all, we can, immediately write citations. We got to touch every one of them. So that's the process.
So like when you work through, let's say a page that has 55 on it, how many violations are you finding on average on a page?
Good question. So I asked Carla to kind of give me some rough numbers. So we figured we did 30 today.
30 pages?
No. 30 of the line items that pulled out. I think about 14 were actual false, were actual violations. The other were what I'll call a false positive. About half.
Okay, that's better than expected.
And you're finding people that aren't registered, but they are advertising.
All of the
collecting taxes.
everything.
And
Some
not
are
paying it.
right. Some aren't registered. Some are not registered but paying. Some
We're not collecting taxes because VRBO does not collect city portion.
right.
Never have.
Never had. And we find that quite often with the Airbnb property owners. Some just in my human observation skill set tell me that they truly believe they're paying them because Airbnb is paying them. They don't realize that there's the city share. They're collecting the state share.
So
And some you can pretty much tell are
So
disingenuous.
registration's coming up. So this year took a long time for people to get registered because it was a new system. Those same registrations that come up here in the next 2 months, it should not take as long for
Absolutely
the
not.
companies or people to get registered.
The heavy lift was getting them in. There's still the change of ownership, and that's the other item Carla wanted me to mention in what's pulled out is that it may show as a violation because there's a discrepancy in names from the appraisal tax rolls that they scrub and our registration. It's a change of ownership.
Right.
And as you guys can imagine, there's been a ton of properties that flip and change and everything else. And so that throws out a whole lot of violations that we have to go through and realize that it's just they're registered, but just under a different name than what's on VRBO. We find that the VRBOs, Airbnbs, those platforms transfer the advertisement to new owners and not always makes those name changes quickly because the older VRBO ad you have, the higher priority you get, the higher you are on the listings. And so they try to, we find that there's a lot of that transfers with a property, but name change doesn't always. So those are the anomalies that just make it very arduous, but it's better than what we had in going through there. The registration system's working really well. Like I said, the property managers, most of the heavy lifting's done. We've got a couple of big property managers that are a little behind, and we've warned and we've
Behind
given
on
them
paying taxes.
No, I'm sorry, behind on the registrations. And we've
Do they just have too many properties or?
the entity itself changed hands, was sold, and new owners, and we've been flexible, but our tolerance and patience is running out.
So they knew they were renting properties.
They knew that
weren't
they had
registered.
properties that needed to be registered, and we can only be sympathetic.
And they
for
weren't
so
new.
long.
It wasn't like a brand new one.
Okay. And one of the things we implemented recently, we are asking that they upload floor plans and parking plans. We know that data is going to help us in the long run. It's not a huge, overly burdensome requirement, we don't believe, because we've made, those documents, they can sketch them out. Give us something that when one of my code enforcement officers goes in there to inspect the property, they can look at and they have something to compare. But like I said, we may be a little bit, though, we'll have to have a meeting within the staff to see how tolerant we are to give them a little bit of time. But again, a lot of people are doing it. So again, do we go overboard to be patient for people just because they have a lot of properties? Or do we just say, work overtime, because obviously if you got a lot of properties, my feeling is you're reaping the benefits of that financially. You just got to deal with the requirements. If you're in business, you got to follow the rules. So that's pretty much my approach.
November, and they haven't registered for 2022. They had the property last year.
Right, some properties.
Okay.
Like I said, not Right. They don't have all of them registered. They have some. So,
So on, like, when you're going through a page of data. If someone sits and works on it continuously, can they do a page a day, 2 pages a day on average?
I think they can check off I think there's low hanging fruit you can check off quickly. Tim, I'd say you could easily do, if that person's dedicated to that, obviously we've got to work out some.
Just depends on what you're working on.
Right. It's got to,
What's I'm saying,
we've got to work out.
if you dedicated 4 hours to it, if a staff member dedicated 4 hours, how much could they get through a half a page, a page?
And I'll give you a better answer, but I'm going to say you could get through probably 4 pages. You could probably get through a couple hundred. If in a day's time, in a work day's time.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, is, you know, how long is that?
Now, that's if they're dedicated to that. The new person, we've got to sort out, obviously, there's some financial, Darva's gonna have some responsibilities for them. So we'll have to figure out where they're gonna best fit into the team, you know, to give us the best bang for the buck. But that, you know, like I said, that'll, I hope be a kind of a joint discussion that we'll have soon.
When we get a building.
When we get a building.
What happens to the people you find that the Airbnb and they thought the Airbnb was collecting the tax?
We let them know and the Airbnb,
But
They come to court.
yeah, they pay.
that tax.
30,000 they were talking about, majority of that was tax, not fine.
Not fine, yeah.
And what
Yeah,
we do is we
and that
have
one
them,
big
they
thing was
give us their Airbnb rentals and then we have to divide it out by month. We calculate the penalty, we calculate the interest and they pay.
How far do you go back?
As far as it goes. The last one I went back to, we went back to 17.
Okay.
So 5 years.
I think 5 years is about legally our,
Yeah,
I
we
mean, I-
haven't really gone back to anything that was 16 or 15 at this point. Now, a year ago, did we? Yes, we were going back to 16, 15. I've gone back to 14. But I'd say since March, since we've been finding these not registered, not paid, I can't think of one that I've gone back before 17.
I do want to mention something about this, though, just so the council's aware. When we're in court and we have those citations, it's certainly a team effort. I have like a boom of people that just come all of a sudden when we know there's a short-term rental case. I have Darla who comes with Excel spreadsheets that say these are the taxes, the back taxes owed. I've got Carla going, here are pictures of everything you need to prove for the enforcement of the prosecution of the citation. And then there's me making sure that it all comes together. And we have not, for the most part, the people that I don't think there hasn't one, everyone who has a citation doesn't get to leave until a check is produced or some kind of financial transaction has happened on the back taxes.
because we will
It's
suspend their
expensive,
ability to
like,
short-term rent. I
it's
mean, we've got a lot of leverage.
Money. You know, you gotta pay it now, you're not.
And we've had the people with back taxes have to pay before we allow them and approve the registration and we put a stop rental order on them.
So the team are me very well.
Well, and that's fair.
Right.
I'm
I mean,
sorry. If you haven't been paying, you shouldn't get to move forward.
And
That's right.
it's all lienable money. So if they thumb their nose at us, then, you know, we can get a judgment and lien the property by ordinance.
And it's the people that are doing Airbnb and VRBO that do not have property managers that I do truly believe a lot of them innocently thought that the city portion was being paid because the state portion was being paid.
I think so.
I really do.
But
I
on
mean,
the
I've
registration form this year, can you change it where when they register and fill it out, it knows that they're responsible just to help them know
No harm.
right at the top, you are responsible for paying. Just to let them know so that we can clear up and communicate with them. Because we shouldn't have to go through this.
We'll use our little policeman that we have on our card stickers that says, hey, Airbnb isn't paying your taxes.
It's just here to.
And then do the owners
That's hilarious.
know
Is that really?
property management company does not pay those taxes? Is it the owner or the property manager that's in court?
Yeah, I mean,
It gets the citation.
some guy.
In a lot of instances, both.
Both of them know. So the owner knows, hey, I thought I was hiring somebody to
We've
do
had both
something
situations, yes,
and they weren't even paying taxes.
correct.
All right.
Right, because they're ultimately responsible,
They
even
are,
if the
correct.
property owner, the
Yep.
property manager.
They can't blame it on the property owner. I mean, the manager.
No, but the
Okay.
property managers have at times said they're doing things to their property owners that they're not, and they're working through all that too.
And the way the ordinance reads, I believe, Roxanne, I know you've looked at it, and I believe that that property manager is the agent. I think that's how we at least write them both. They're the designated agent owner, or the owner operator. The terms are defined in the ordinance, so I think it kind of gives us a little bit of wiggle room, and nobody really presses it.
The other thing I don't know if you'd want to talk about or mentioned is code enforcement involving substandard dilapidated structures that have not been rehabbed or repaired since the
Sure.
Hurricane Harvey
It-
issue.
Absolutely. And so we had a conversation with Roxanne because when she came on board, again, she was drinking from the fire hose. There was a lot going on, but one of the issues that was out there looming and had been hanging out there for a few holdout properties that have been deemed substandard. Some have already been prosecuted, gone through the system with a court order, but they were just left there. And again, these become very complicated issues for staff because there's legal repercussions. Obviously, I don't want to be directing somebody to go tear a house down without making sure that the due process has been there, and I'm not qualified to do that. So fast forward, we asked Roxanne to come in and talk to her, and we kind of brought her up to speed on some of these. And an approach we hadn't taken before is her suggestion was, let me sit down with them and let me pretty much read them how this is going to go. And I think those are a couple of conversations we've had with some properties, and she's made it clear in no uncertain terms that there will be resolution and we will start citing you again, because it's another violation that can become a lien on the property. We've proceeded very cautiously, maybe too much so, and that's on me because we were just uncharted territory with tearing somebody's house down. So Roxanne stepped in. She's had meetings now. We've got a few more. I think the process is working. These people are coming to the table and they know we're serious.
So again, it's teamwork. It's like a team whoom, gets together when we're in the room. So it's the building official, it's Carla, code enforcement. It's the second code enforcement officer, it's me and the property owner. And we all have a nice chat about what the issues are. And we all use our own tools and resources to resolve that issue to get it to the next phase. So you're going to see some substantial progress in some of these substandard structures that are very comparably different than the neighbors homes that haven't been fixed. And one of those first ones you're going to see is on 137 West Roberts Avenue.
Is that? I mean, are we okay to mention all that right now?
Yeah, I mean,
It's just in the reporting.
Yeah.
Okay.
The reporting.
Okay.
So like I said, we've that process has worked well. We've achieved some compliance in portions of that, which is trailers that have remained. So now we need to bring her up to speed on the some other trailer issues, and we'll start hammering those folks that have been lingering on too long. Anything else, Scott? Thank you again for the support. The zero tolerance is it helps us because it's very clear and it's working. Have a happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rick. All right, Daniel.
So my report looks a little different this month than it normally does, just because I added all the pretty graphs and charts and everything else. I don't know if y'all looked at that or not, but the new program we have allows me to be able to do that. And ideally, this front page will almost start going away, and it'll just be a bunch of those, and it's easier for me to produce, easier for y'all to look at. A lot of different training. We've got done some simulation training. We had HCA, their ambulance based out of Houston came down, got over $500,000 of equipment. You can do any kind of simulation you can possibly think of in the back of that. And so we trained a lot of our crews. Everybody did very well. With the Naval Air Station training, went over there to the Naval Air Station. And pretty much, I mean, as y'all see of this Dallas horrific accident that happened at the air shows, you know, and when they're doing those air shows, they're flying over us. Whenever the Navy's doing all the training flights, they're flying over us. The helicopters from Coast Guard are constantly over us. And so pretty much we just went and got on all that aircraft, figure out how to shut it down, figure out what to cut, what not to cut, how not to blow somebody up in there. So yeah, it was a really, really good training. It's their first one they ever did, and they're going to make it an annual event. So it's really good. Full steam ahead with our can drive. As you've seen, we've been outside of IGA.
Cheating.
Like that.
You have your lights on.
Go get her. We can't just sit at home and expect cans to come to us.
Something was going on.
Give to the school, please.
Small fundraiser.
That's right, fundraiser. Hopefully you see more and more of us. There you go. That's
Give
right.
to the school.
All accepting donations as well.
Yeah. That's what we call it
with the school.
Is there a little competition going on?
Yeah, don't worry, there'll be some good results. Community outreach, yeah, we've been just, like I said, doing that, doing, Port A Days was awesome. I don't know if anybody got a chance to go down there. Ashley and her crew and everybody did a fantastic
Great.
job.
heard
They
good
had the
things.
chili cook-off and they were able to raise us $3,800, which is
Nice.
beyond happy to take that money. Port A Days Parade, fire prevention. I think last month I mentioned we did the fire prevention with the elementary school. It was a really, really good time. All those kids paid attention. It was nice. Open house, we did at the fire department, helped out with them, trunk or treat, cross country send off, and then our national night out. So yeah, it's a pretty good month of outreach. And as far as all the numbers, you see them there. This new graph, I'll show you the second page if you want to look at that with, as far as our average response times. It's really nice because this graph breaks it down to where it shows me the limited calls that are way outside the time range. And then I can look into those calls individually and figure out why we're outside the time range. Originally, when I ran the report, there was one that was like 30-something minutes, and ultimately it was somebody accidentally just put the wrong time in. So we just got to go in there and fix that kind of stuff. And then the other ones, out of the 5 that were outside of our normal range, you know, they dispatch us, but then we have to sit at the dock for 30 minutes waiting on a boat to come in. And then there are highway calls down towards La Mirage area or middle of the night calls. So I mean, could be expected. Other than that, everything else is looking pretty good.
Saw you out at Halloween.
Their Halloween as well. All right.
Great job.
Thank you, Daniel.
And thanks for the Tahoe and.
You're welcome. Yeah. See you. 3 years.
Yeah. 3 years.
Steve.
Good evening, council. Daniel stole most of my thunder as far as community outreach. We were involved in most of those same events. We also, this time of year is when we do our in-service training. And we've trained up every officer in the police department now and several of the surrounding agencies, again, on the active shooter protocols on site with the high school. The high school or the school system today, there's a new state law that every school in the state, they have an audit, a surprise audit where they send in somebody from the state education agency that walks on the campus and looks for breaches of security protocols, and they found none with our school system today. So congratulations to Ms. McKinney and all the hard work over there.
Great.
Do we have any questions on any of our numbers? We did complete, I introduced you to Diamond O'Gean a couple months ago. She completed the field training program and is out on her own now, so.
Good. That's awesome.
Cool.
Good. All right.
I enjoyed your boys' speech at the Veterans Day. I know.
Yeah.
All right.
Speeding. Speeding.
So it is time now, according to the agenda, to go in executive session, according to section 551 .071, the Texas Opens Meeting Act, to meet with its attorney and seek legal advice on a matter in which the duty of the attorney to the city council under the Texas Disciplinary Rules of Professional Conduct of the State Bar of Texas clearly conflicts with Texas Open Meetings Act. Got a couple of items, so
Beach access road and RT